Reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 18th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Whether you're watching us in Wolverhampton, whether you're listening to us in Norwich, maybe you're even watching us on YouTube in St David's in Wales. Wherever you are, you can take us with you.
Now, some of you may also be catching up on the GB News app while travelling to work. And if you're a Brit abroad, well, we're here for you as well. Coming up this morning on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
A rare red weather warning for wind has been issued in Wales and parts of England as Storm Eunice heads for the UK. Hundreds of schools will close in affected areas, while the Prime Minister says the Army is on standby to support those affected.
NHS leaders say free COVID tests and self-isolation rules must continue amid reports that the Prime Minister is expected to unveil his plan for living with coronavirus on Monday. Do you agree that free COVID tests should continue?
Plus, Southend-on-Sea is set to become a city on March the 1st. We'll be hearing from the new MP for Southend West about how the Essex town will gain city status in honour of the late Sir David Amos.
Don't forget, everything we do is geared around you. We really want to hear from you this morning. Drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews.
I can hear an odd noise, can you?
No.
While we were talking then, I could hear...
Don't know.
No, odd. I've just been checking all my implements. and I don't think they're making a noise.
I don't know what that is. Though, through the national anthem, I have to tell you, Anne was doing all the accompaniments.
Yeah.
Which was classic
I was
this morning.
doing a descant.
Yeah, very nice.
Just as well we're actually not on air there. You can't hear us at least.
I tell you what, we need to have a smile this morning because that weather is looking terrible and it's going to get worse from about now onwards. The drive in this morning was bad enough, but it's going to be terrible getting home today.
I've never heard a warning before where they sort of say stay in, if you possibly can, stay indoors, but it is that serious. So if you don't have to go anywhere today, please avoid the roads and just stay indoors. It's the safest place to be. Isn't that terrible? I remember the 1987 storm.
Oh, that was the one, of course, where they said, "Oh no, it's not going to be anything."
That's right. Yes, I'm afraid it was. It was very embarrassing.
Forecast.
Weatherman, yes, whose name became very synonymous with bad forecasting, really, didn't it? But and it was very, very frightening. Trees were down all over the place. That seems to be the worst thing as well, isn't it? It's the most dangerous thing is the trees that are brought down.
Yeah.
Hopefully, not on top of anyone or anything of value.
Anyway, if you're in a safe place this morning, when that wind picks up, or if it picks up round you and you've got any decent pictures or videos, then we'd love to hear from you. We've got our reporters out and about all across the country today, but we'd love to see your little pictures and videos as well. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
I was working that morning of the 1987 storm on breakfast television, and I was waiting for my car to come and get me about 2:30 in the morning. and it did come. But we all thought at the time that it was just a blackout in a very small part of London. And then as we tried to drive in towards the studios, there were trees down everywhere. You had to keep stopping, trying to find a different route to the studio. And as we travelled into London, we found that really all of London was blacked out. And of course, it was only when we got into the studio we realised the news that it was the whole of the country was as well. So we couldn't do anything. First of all, our studios weren't working. We couldn't get any electricity to get the studios working. When we did, I was in another part of London in what we used to call a news bubble, a tiny little studio with one camera, one light. And I was wearing a Bugs Bunny jumper as well. I'll never forget this. I was just to travel into the studio in a big red jumper with Bugs Bunny on the front. And it was only when we realised that actually it was a very serious storm and people were dying that I thought, I can't go on presenting the programme with Bugs Bunny on. So I just literally turned it round and presented with my jumper on back to front for the rest of the morning. And I was due to interview an astronaut who'd been to the moon that morning.
Right.
And we couldn't interview him because there just wasn't the studio facility to do so. So I remember the editor had to go into this, the astronaut who'd managed to make it into the studio and said, I'm terribly sorry, we can't interview you because there's a terrible storm. And I thought, how embarrassing is that? The man's been to the moon. And we couldn't interview him because of a storm. But of course, it turned out, as the morning rolled on, it turned out to be really serious. I do hope that it's not going to be a rerun of that.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. In the meantime, you may have some medical questions today. We're going to be joined by Dr. Amika a little bit later on, so you can send us any health questions, any health concerns as well that you have today. And just quickly want to mention biopics, because I'm a big Queen fan, and obviously Bohemian Rhapsody was the big thing. That was the one for me.
Brilliant movie.
But this new Baz Luhrmann Elvis biopic is coming up. Now, I'm no Elvis fan. I'm not an Elvis fan. But that looks amazing.
It really does. Well, whether you're an Elvis fan or not, you have to appreciate he had an incredible voice and an amazing life story.
Yeah.
Incredible life story. So that is going to be good. The fact that it's got Tom Hanks in it as well, is, you know, it's got it sold, isn't it? That's not out till June. But we were just wondering, who would you like to see the next biopic of, or what's your favourite biopic at the moment? And what do you think of that? What do you think of that? Were you an Elvis person or a Beatles person?
Was it one or the other?
Well, in my age group in Britain, it was. You were either Beatles or Elvis. But of course, they met, and they.
Yeah.
The Beatles have always said that they owe a lot to him. So, I don't know, fascinating story.
Let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, let's move on to the serious stuff this morning, because the Met Office has issued a rare red weather alert for the east of England, including London, urging people to stay home, warning of a significant danger to life.
Forecasters say the whole of the country will be affected by strong winds as Storm Eunice makes landfall.
Well, National Highways have issued an alert for the whole road network from now till 6 p.m. Our reporters are in West Lothian and Reading for us this morning, so let's kick off with our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson. Morning to you, Davy. I mean, what's the situation there so far this morning?
Well, I have to say, Storm Eunice really hasn't hit here at all. We've got some sleety rain where I'm standing now. As you can see, I've been covered a little bit, but other than that, a little bit of wind. It's not really been too bad at all. It doesn't look like we're going to bear the brunt of it like England and Wales are. So I think the main problem in Scotland is going to be snow. We've already had snow up in the Highlands, up in the northeast of Scotland, Grampian and Aberdeen area. Certainly some snow there and further maybe up to the northwest. But other than that, it's not been too bad. It certainly hasn't hit yet. I think round about now it's expected to start to snow a bit heavier, and that's when the problems could arise, of course. There's a school here over my shoulder. I don't think that will be affected unless we see an absolute deluge of snow later today. But that's going to have an impact on travel plans if it does snow heavier. Obviously on the roads, certainly on the rail. ScotRail yesterday heavily criticised for suspending services at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but given the conditions, you really can't say, you can't blame them. It was pretty bad yesterday, although we've seen worse in Scotland. I heard you say earlier on, and that danger of life. You've never heard that. Well, we've had quite a few of these in Scotland over the years, so perhaps maybe more used to the red warnings that are put in place. But it's only a yellow warning in Scotland, so this is quite tame so far. But it could change if we get that snow.
Well, you look well prepared for it anyway. It looks pretty cold. Let's hope it doesn't get any worse for you. Thanks very much indeed. Shall we go now then to Alice? Tell us where you are, Alice, and what are they expecting there?
Hi there, good morning. Yeah, I'm just outside Reading Station, and actually I think it's going to be much worse than we expected. There was an amber weather warning in place yesterday, and then the Met Office upgraded that at 10 o'clock last night, and it's now going to be a red weather warning, which is of course the concern about loss of life from flying debris, which of course sounds incredibly worrying for people who are in London and the southeast, because it's very rare to have that type of weather warning for London and the southeast, and of course it is going to cause absolute mayhem on the trains already. I've had a quick look in the station, and there are so many trains that already are cancelled or delayed. I know Great Western Railway, for example, they operate from London through to Bristol all the way down to Penzance. They're operating at half their normal capacity. In Wales, for example, there are no trains operating today, and if you are lucky enough to try and get on the train in order to get to work, for example, the trains are going to be going at maximum 50 miles per hour because of the concern of the winds, which in London and the southeast could reach up to 80 miles per hour today. So I think that's a real concern, is about what is going to happen. You were talking earlier about the concern about trees falling on lines, tiles falling off roof. The real worry is what happens if those objects go onto the train lines, and what the kind of impact that will have for train companies and travellers. I mean, the good news at least is that we knew the storm was coming, and there's been lots of preparations in place, and train companies, I was looking just earlier now, and if people have got tickets and they're unable to travel, train companies are saying your ticket will still be valid and you can travel in a couple of days. But unfortunately there will be lots of people who still have to get to work for various reasons, by train or by road. I mean, the RSC has also said that they don't want people travelling on the roads, but not everybody is able to work from home.
No, they're certainly not. Look, Alice and Davey, thank you very much indeed. Let us know how you're coping with all of this. Are you going to work from home today? Is that just for some people it's an option. For others, it just isn't.
For some people, it is a Friday, so maybe you could make it a long weekend.
But maybe the bosses can just say, well, just don't come in. Don't come in today. Have a day. I mean, you need to ring up and check before you start heading out, because the last thing you want to do is get on those roads if you absolutely don't need to. It's going to be awful.
It looks terrible out there already, doesn't it? I must say, Alice as well. For anyone listening on the radio, Alice has got one of those incredible hoods that looks fit for the Arctic or Antarctic at the moment.
Yes.
Looks very glamorous at the moment, but once it's had a bucket of water over it, which I'm sure it will do very soon, it looks good. But again, if you are venturing out, make sure you're well wrapped up. You don't need me to tell you that, of course. But I think the main thing is that all of the authorities are saying don't go out if you don't have to.
Oh, and actually, lots of warnings. My other half got an email from the car insurance people last night saying if you do have to go out, drive slowly. This is what you do if you get hit by a gust. Make sure you've got supplies in the car. All this. It was a sensible precaution.
It's frightening driving, especially on a motorway. If people are tempted to go fast and then you hit a sudden gust of wind, it can be terrifying.
Yeah.
So please watch out. Watch out for yourselves.
Let's run you through some of the other headlines today. And Boris Johnson is set to attend a major security conference in Munich this weekend as tensions rise between Russia and the West. The UK and NATO have accused Russia of manufacturing a pretext for invading Ukraine. It's after Ukraine's foreign minister claimed a village near the city of Luhansk had been shelled by Russian-backed separatists from within the occupied territory of Donbass.
Prince Harry's High Court claim against a Home Office decision on security will have its first hearing today. The Duke of Sussex is disputing a decision which prevents him from paying for police protection whilst he and his family are in the UK. Harry and Meghan lost their taxpayer-funded security, of course, when they quit as senior working royals early last year.
Wales has dropped the use of COVID passes at indoor and outdoor venues. Although the restrictions have been scrapped, venues including sports grounds and nightclubs have been told they can still demand proof of vaccination as a condition of entry if they want to.
And members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are staging strikes this weekend in 3 separate disputes over issues including pay and rosters. Staff on London's Underground Night Tube are taking action this evening. Train managers and senior conductors on Cross Country will be striking on Saturday, and conductors on the Transpennine Express will walk out on Sunday.
At the Winter Olympics, the Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva fell apart in the women's free skate final and finished out of the medals in 4th place. The 15-year-old has been in the spotlight for days, of course, after a court ruled that she could still compete after a failed drugs test. She led going into the final, but after 2 falls and a series of errors, it was her teammate Anna Sherbakova, who took gold.
And I don't know if you watched that, but it was heartbreaking.
I didn't see it,
no.
no.
It was heartbreaking. Me and my family were all texting each other saying, any minute she's coming onto the ice, any minute, because she is such a fantastic ice dancer. Only 15. I mean, extraordinary and tipped to win gold. But all of this pressure on her, whether justified or not, she's only 15.
But what has gone on with this drug situation?
Well, so far, she was found guilty of taking a banned substance back in December, but that only came out a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So the Beijing Olympic Authority said that she could skate, but if she medalled, they would not hold a podium medal thing.
Right.
They wouldn't give out the medals if she medalled. And she didn't, of course, because it was catastrophic, her performance. It was heartbreaking. And I was listening to former Olympic medalist Robin Cousins, who was talking about it. He was commentating, and he was lost for words. In fact, he was so upset he couldn't speak because he just thought, she's 15. Really, she should have been sent during this controversy. She should have been sent home to be with her family, making her compete at that level under that sort of stress and strain at the age of 15. Not fair.
No, doesn't sound fair to me.
I'd love to know what you think, actually, because it broke my heart watching it. GB Views at gbnews.uk. What do you think of what happened to her yesterday?
Now, Britain and the United States are accusing Russia of manufacturing a false pretext to invade Ukraine. It follows a surge in shelling of Ukrainian border villages by Russian-backed separatists.
In one incident, a nursery was shelled and several people injured. Our security editor, Mark White, has this report.
It is an awesome display of the firepower the Russian military has at its disposal, should Vladimir Putin decide to use it. For the moment, the Kremlin continues to insist these are simply part of Russia's regularly scheduled military exercises in the region. But for Ukraine and the West, these are manoeuvres with menace. The British Prime Minister visited RAF Waddington in Lincolnshire, shown around a typhoon, as an additional 4 of these fighters arrived in Cyprus to help boost the air policing effort over Eastern Europe. He again urged Vladimir Putin to pull back from the brink.
There is still time for the Putin regime to step back. There's still time to avoid a catastrophe for Russia, a catastrophe for Ukraine and for the world.
Tensions on the Russia-Ukraine border have increased significantly in the last couple of days. This nursery in the Luhansk region of eastern Ukraine was shelled by nearby Russian-backed separatists. At the NATO summit in Brussels, the US Defense Secretary said it was an extremely worrying development.
We've said for some time that the Russians might do something like this in order to justify a military conflict, so we'll be watching this very closely.
These latest satellite images show the extent of the Russian military build-up, thousands of troops and machinery at key locations along the Ukrainian border, with little evidence of any drawdown as promised by Moscow.
Russia must think again. Despite their claims, Russia's military build-up shows no signs of slowing. There is currently no evidence that their forces are withdrawing, and we need Russia to step back from the brink.
On the Ukrainian side of the border, President Zelensky has been visiting his forces. They are vastly outnumbered by their Russian neighbours. But Ukraine warns any move by Vladimir Putin will be no walkover. It would be the worst possible outcome for both sides. Mark White, GB News.
Well, that's still to come for you today, including a good look through the papers with Mike Parry and Liz Kershaw. But first, let's have a look at the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank, and so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts during the next few hours, but in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very nearly 6:24. There you go. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio right across the UK and across the world, online and on YouTube and everything else.
Oh yeah, don't forget, because I always look forward to this. If you're watching us from, well, anywhere actually, take a picture of you watching us and send it in, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and then we can share. You know what we look like. We'd like to see what you look like.
Yeah, it is really nice to see you, actually. Loads of you getting in touch on biopics. James says, I want to see one on Nigel Farage.
Do you know, actually, that would be a very interesting
It would be interesting, but Nigel,
movie.
I suspect, would insist on playing himself.
Well, I was just going to say, who would he choose to play himself?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Whether you agree with Nigel Farage politically or not.
Interesting life, you have to say. My
Do you know what?
goodness.
He's a nice fella. He's a nice fellow. He's very personable.
Absolutely. Good morning, Stephen and Anne. I was born in the early 50s. At school, we had two divided groups. You were either an Elvis fan or a Cliff Richard fan. I'm so looking forward to the Elvis film this summer too. We were talking about this amazing new biopic that they brought out, or they're going to bring out in June, about Elvis, and it looks superb. Stars Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Sam says, my favourite biopic movies include Ray with Jamie Foxx and Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix. Great movies. I would highly recommend biopic movies. Yeah,
well, some of them are good. Simon says my biopic choice would be David Bowie or Frank Sinatra. Either of them would be good, actually. There was a drama about David Bowie, a TV drama, I think.
Was
there? I don't know.
I don't know. I'd like
Again,
to see
a
that.
fascinating
I mean,
life.
Bowie was amazing.
Yeah.
And Sinatra,
well,
that was a story in
fact,
itself.
it's amazing that one hasn't already been made about Sinatra.
It has, but not a big one.
What an incredible, big, huge life he had.
Yeah, very controversial as well. Mary Reeves, good morning to you, Mary. Now, Mary's in love.
Yeah. Oh.
She's in love with Elvis. Yeah, and she fell in love with Elvis in 1954 when she was 11. She said you were either an Elvis fan or a Pat Boone fan a few years before the Beatles.
Yeah, and
Pat Boone, yeah.
Pat Boone, yeah. He was a crooner, wasn't he, Pat Boone?
Yeah.
And Robert says, I would choose Canadian singer-songwriter Leonard Cohen. What a man. Do you know, yeah, that's made me think of, talking about Canadians, Joni Mitchell would make a fascinating biopic.
Yeah.
Because she lived a very interesting life when she was young. She also had a daughter she gave up for adoption, and then later reunited with that daughter. And, of course, she's a huge artist. Her paintings sell for thousands upon thousands. So she'd be really interesting.
So lots of interesting people out there.
Yeah.
I wasn't mad keen on the Elton John one.
Nor me.
Too
weird and wonderful for me.
It was a bit weird. It was a bit weird.
But lots of people love it.
Yeah, there you go. Now, COVID. We sort of feel like I haven't talked about COVID, not in great depth for a little while, but free COVID tests should continue for the public and self-isolation rules must not be scrapped. That's according to a survey of NHS leaders.
Yeah, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is expected to unveil his plan for living with coronavirus on Monday, with ministers having suggested that free tests will be axed.
Well, former medical director and chief medical officer of Bupa, Andrew Valence-Owen, joins us now. Good morning to you, Andrew. I mean, what do you think we should be doing moving forward?
Well, good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you in the morning. Yes, of course, we have to learn to live with COVID, but that doesn't mean it no longer exists. I've got many friends and colleagues working in the NHS, and I think that this view that has been expressed, or this survey, very much expresses the views of many, many people working in the National Health Service. I think they feel that you need a more cautious, sort of evidence-based approach rather than one perhaps based more on political expediency. I mean, I read a piece yesterday by a nurse from intensive care, and she says, if you have never zipped up a body bag on a shift, if you have never watched a person suffocate to death from her own blood, if you've never been punched in the face for trying to assess your patient, and it goes on. You know, what they're saying is, you know, this is hard graft. We've been working really hard, and we still are. I mean, 8,800 patients admitted to hospitals in the last 7 days. It isn't over yet. And it's really important to stick to the basics until we really are clear.
At what point, I mean, I know that people are still dying of COVID. So at what point do you start to balance that equation between people who are suffering and dying still from COVID and people who are suffering and dying from other things?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's a really difficult balance to strike. At the moment, the deaths are definitely down. The hospitalizations are definitely down. What I'm saying is that they are still there. And, you know, particularly in relation to elderly, frail people, it's often the cases that are in hospital are much more severe. The lesser cases don't come to hospital anymore. So, but there is a balance to be struck, and eventually the numbers will come down, and it really will be seen much more like flu, if you like, the Omicron variant. But at the moment, there are a lot of pressures on staff in hospitals, not only with COVID, but they've also got 6 million people on the waiting lists. A lot of those people desperately in need of operations and treatment, and I think politicians should remember, they were clapping for people in the NHS, when it was popular to do so. And I think they should remember that there's still a huge amount of pressure and stress in the NHS, and so it's too early to move completely away from these requirements.
I know, but what have we spent on tests so far? 6 billion? It'll be more now. There is an argument to say if most people are coping with COVID well, I mean, obviously there are those numbers who are becoming very ill, and unfortunately some who are still dying. But if most people are coping very well, why bother with these free tests? Because we're all getting through 5 or 6 a week. It's costing an absolute fortune. We can't continue that forever.
I think that's a fair point, and people already. I mean, I work with people who, partly who are actually dealing with these tests, and there's been a big fall off in the number of tests done naturally, but. It's so important still, if you're going into a hospital or a care home or places like that, to know that you are negative, because it's not about the individual, it's about what that individual might bring into a hospital or care home or an underground train or whatever it is, in terms of spreading it and giving it both to either patients in the healthcare system or to colleagues. And we just have to be really careful, I think. And I think so in those areas, quarantine is important. Even if it does come back a few days, one step at a time, I think, is the approach that we need to adopt.
So we're told that the Prime Minister is probably going to make this announcement on Monday. What would you advise him, if you could? What would you advise him to do in this announcement?
Would that I could advise the Prime Minister. But I would just say, stick with the evidence. The evidence is still there. There are a lot of hospital admissions still. There is a need, but in particular circumstances, for quarantine. For people who find that they are positive, they should stay in quarantine for a few days, especially if they're going to be going into places where there are lots of people, particularly where there are lots of vulnerable people. I think it's premature to cut it all off now. One step at a time is what I would advise, and stick to the science.
OK. Andrew Vallance-Owen, former Chief Medical Officer of Bupa. Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do stay with us as we go through more of the day's top stories very shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Oh, morning to you. It's 6:35. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne across the UK on your TV and on the wireless.
Yeah, let's take a look at today's front pages, shall we? The Daily Express is describing Storm Eunice as the storm of the century, as it's expected to be the worst of its kind for 3 decades.
The Mail says we're braced for a dangerous weather phenomenon known as a sting jet. It's a narrow focus region of exceptionally strong wind.
The Sun calls it a killer storm, as the Met Office says there's a significant danger to life. Troops are on standby to aid rescue efforts.
Now, away from Storm Eunice, and the Mirror has found that thousands of vulnerable care home residents have been forced out of private care homes.
To Ukraine and Russia tensions in the Telegraph, which says that Russia has begun false flag attacks after an attack on a nursery in a Ukraine village.
Now, The Times is reporting that Whitehall is convinced Vladimir Putin's forces are about to invade Ukraine.
So, shall we go through the papers now? And joining us this morning are journalist Mike Parry and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Lovely to see you both.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Good. We'll start with you then, Mike, shall we? And the false flag business. I didn't know what a false flag was until about...
Well, it's designed to make out that the enemy have already started attacking you and you're going to retaliate. But it's a ridiculous ploy, because this happened in the Donbass, which is already a disputed area.
Yes.
When the Crimea was taken, which of course is in the south of Ukraine, some of the sort of sympathisers to the Russian cause got into the Donbass and the region there, and these sympathisers to the Russian and Moscow cause appear to be the people now who've started the hassle, i.e. the hassle being it's not clear who's attacking who, but that triggers both sides to say, right, you know, it looks like it started, and it could give the Kremlin, it could give Putin the opportunity to say, well, I legitimately had to move my forces now because we came under attack. But everybody knows. I mean, to be honest, the Americans and ourselves in Whitehall here were predicting this would happen 10 days ago. We said that, you know, this is the way that evil regimes, which I believe Russia to be under Mr. Putin, this is the way they start things.
So just to get it straight, this nursery, and we've seen the news footage, the nursery was shelled.
The grounds of the nursery were shelled, but what's interesting, because I investigated this last night, is that nursery has been hit before. The fighting there started in 2014. It has been hit before. You won't believe it, but the head teacher there showed the authorities the cellar where they've got water, they've got food supplies, they've got huge metal doors to make the children safe, all the time expecting some sort of incursion from those who are sympathetic to Russia in that part of the world. It could happen at any time, and it did. They've even got sleeping bags there, because the children might have to stay there for 3 or 4 days if it starts to get nasty.
It's a hugely confusing situation, Liz, isn't it?
But it's meant to be.
I'm finding it rather distasteful, the whole way it's being monitored, reported. I mean, I'm too young to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was 3, but I heard about it, you know, shortly after, and came to realise its significance when Russia planted missiles on the island of Cuba, so near to the USA. And of course, the USA weren't going to accept that. And Kennedy, even against advice from his inner circle, stood his ground. A terrifying decision, you know, you remove those or we'll strike. And that was a real moment to talk to people, you know, of my parents' generation with small kids at the time. That was a real moment where the world could end, you know, nuclear war. It was only 17 years after the Second World War. This, I'm just finding, I know it's a really serious situation, But I'm finding the punditry, you know, where you might almost wheel out Gary Lineker and a team of, you know, match experts to pontificate and predict the results. It's really unsavoury to me, and I'm getting a bit tired of it. I mean, we had Biden last week categorically saying our intelligence says that Russia will invade Ukraine on the 16th. Well, that's been and gone. And there's a guy in the papers today, a pilot, and he's flown, you know, you can have a message in the sky, and while commercial aircraft are grounded there, he's flown over for an hour and a half with a banner saying in Ukrainian, don't ask me to say it in Ukraine, basically saying, keep calm, carry on, nothing to see here. But I don't understand. I don't understand why it's such an... It's like, it's not a video game.
No, I feel exactly the same revulsion.
Thank you, Anne.
It's as though somebody thinks it's funny.
Yeah. So they're going, oh, the first move will be for Putin to fire, you know, rockets, missiles at Kiev. And it's not... It's, you know, let's have some Guns N' Roses or Metallica playing in the background. It's not.
It is very much like 1939, the phony war, if you see what I mean. You know, just, you know, standing off each other and who's going to strike first.
Well, except Hitler had form and he was a legitimate...
Yeah, I totally agree. But what I'm saying is, his plan then was to invade the UK. Unfortunately, he never did. But anyway, the point I'm making is that it could start by an accident, it could start... But what is the most surprising issue this morning in the papers that we're reviewing? Both the Pentagon and the Ministry of Defence in this country have issued the plan that Putin intends to carry out when he invades the Ukraine. Yeah. They've got all the routes they're going to come in on and where they're going to come from. Belarus, Crimea, you know.
Chernobyl,
unbelievable.
Well, I mean, that's not going to give him the option to do something else should he choose to.
Yeah.
Liz, let's move closer to home, should we? We've just had Dudley, now Eunice.
Such rubbish names out there.
Rubbish names.
Anyway, it could have been Elizabeth, couldn't it? Could have been. Anyway, it was just kicking off as I walked in the door. First rain that blowing me hood around on my park, and by 10 o'clock this morning, from our personal point of view, we're here, we made it to work, but it hit the shores at 3 a.m. And by the time we leave this building, it's going to be, you know, 60-odd mile-an-hour winds. And in Cornwall, already, you know, they're feeling it. And it's, if you have to travel today, and I know people that do, because there are some things you can't... I know a band who's on tour at the moment. They've got to go from Brighton to Newcastle today.
Oh, golly.
So through the winds and then into the deep snow. But, you know, the show must go on. So I just hope those guys are safe in their double-decker tour bus, high-sided vehicle. No, I just don't... I remember... Anne was talking earlier about 1987, and I remember I lived in this garret in North London, top floor in the roof, and it was absolutely... lying in bed, it was absolutely terrifying, wasn't it? Yeah, and we didn't get the worst of it. They didn't.
Remember Kew Gardens, all the trees, those huge, amazing trees were uprooted.
Yeah, and the south coast, you know, in Kent and...
Where I lived in Surrey in 87, it flattened whole forest. Well, not forest, but woods. You know, on the North Downs, you got these little woods that you walked around. It just flattened them like matchsticks. Honestly, it was unbelievable. And this one is allegedly going to be more powerful than that one. So, you know, goodness knows what could happen.
Stay home. And I've done loads of cooking yesterday in case the power goes. So if you're hungry later, mind you, it's all meat-based.
Oh, that's
but I've cooked all this stuff so I can fry it up on top of the wood-burning stove.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Prepared.
You've got to be prepared.
I was literally cooking up a storm.
Oh, you were. Great. I mean, I just want to point out, everyone's going on about 1987. I was 13.
Well, you still remember it.
I remember it, but,
you
know, I was 13. I'm just pointing that out.
Well, how relevant is that?
It's nice to feel young again.
No, we have more life experience of this thing, you see.
I'm going to get my own back in the next section.
So, Mike, to the Telegraph and government security vetting.
I know, unbelievable, isn't it? So, government security vetters have dropped automatic face-to-face interviews for Whitehall jobs with access to top-secret information. I mean, talk about, you know, the civil service being reluctant to get back to their offices. We all know...
Doing it over Zoom.
Say again. Doing it over Zoom. But we all know that the biggest problem in trying to get people back to work across this country is, of course, the civil service. And most of the civil service is based in London. Now, OK, so they want the work-life balance and 2 days a week here. If they can't go into their office to interview people who could be the next James Bond, then I do not think they are applying themselves to the job properly. Supposing on a Zoom interview they just see the bloke's face like that, supposing he's got love and hate tattooed on his knuckles or something like that, how can you tell? I know it sounds extreme and ridiculous.
No, I think one-to-one. As you said, if you're interviewing for a job, surely you go in and do a face-to-face interview.
Absolutely, and surely, don't these people have to have psychological training when they're interviewing somebody who might be a spy for our country? And don't they have to be able to read their body language? Not just their face, but the way they sit and the way they twitch and the way they address themselves.
This has come up with the police as well. They stopped doing face-to-face.
It's utterly
not even
ridiculous.
doing they're just like filling a form and a bit of a chat, and you can be on the streets in a uniform with powers.
Absolutely, and apparently as well, it says here, an investigation into how this goes, one-to-one, you feel safer in asking people about the intimate details of their life. For instance, they interviewed one guy recently who said, well, actually, I'm breaking up with my wife, so I will expect to have several sexual relationships over the next 12 months. Immediately that guy would be banned because that would open him up to the possibility of being blackmailed by a Russian girl or something like that.
Well, at least he's honest. That's got that covered. Too much information. It's a good job people can't see us in the flesh because I'm looking under this table and there's some very funny sights.
What?
What?
Well, footwear and stuff.
I've got my comfy trainers on.
Yeah, me too.
But it's quite a walk from the car park.
Yes, exactly.
So there you go. I do like comfy trainers. I'll tell you, talking of, I've got decent footwear on. Camilla Valieva.
Glad you said
it. Honestly, it's heartbreaking.
Oh, poor girl.
She...
poor little girl.
Something very wrong went wrong, didn't it? I mean, I just thought she's so elegant and graceful. Yeah. Look at the length of her legs. She's beautiful.
Absolutely.
She's beautifully dressed. She's a stunning dancer. I thought, you know what? At my age, I've always wanted to be an ice skater. I'm going to take it up. My mum took me as a child and I was rubbish, but I thought, no, it's not too late.
Liz, it looks so easy.
No, I wouldn't attempt
doing a quadruple.
Just going in a straight line and keeping up. But
Yeah.
now I'm thinking, oh my goodness, if it can happen.
But you know, I mean, there's
on her.
one really horrible headline I saw in the Daily Mail there. I couldn't believe it because, I mean, none of these things have been decided. And at the end of the day, she's 15.
Yeah.
They call her a dope cheat in the headline. Now, none of this has been decided. We do know that she was found to have taken a banned substance back in December.
Well, she said she was contaminated by something her dad was taking.
Her granddad's medicine or something. But we don't know. The point is that hasn't been looked into yet. To call her a drugs cheat.
Yeah, because at 15, even if something was specifically taken that was dodgy, she's not made that decision, has she?
She's had no control over it whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why anybody's surprised. Do you remember 2014, Sochi? I mean, the whole Russian team were banned because they found the most amazing drug doping racket going on, where the Russian scientists, were actually swapping samples with samples that weren't taken from the competitors.
Well, that's why this year they haven't been able to compete under the Russian flag.
Absolutely.
They've had to be called the Russian Olympic Committee.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, she's 15, she's a child.
Exactly.
Oh, she's going to be able to capitalise on this because she's got so much public affection and sympathy and admiration for her skills. She can come back and she can do it.
Depends what she's going
when
to be
she's got
treated
more
like
confidence.
That's what I worry about.
Yeah, I agree.
When she gets back home.
Yeah. I would imagine
she's a failure. They don't like failures.
We're not talking about. Okay.
I would imagine she'll flee to America now, won't she? Because
she could do.
Generally speaking, athletes who excel in the Eastern Bloc, as it was, like Navratilova, they end up in America and should, hopefully, because her head's got to be cleared as well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
She was in a terrible state, the poor little girl, after, she got banned. She needs to go into a new arena.
Do you know, she's been dancing competitively. I was looking on YouTube. Yeah. She's been dancing competitively since she was 5.
What does that do to your body as you're developing?
Well, apparently they suffer because she's one of the few dancers that can do a quad.
That's right,
that you literally rotate 4 times in the air before you land again. When you land, I was reading up on this, when you land with 7 times your body weight.
Golly.
And they usually suffer from very bad backs.
And your knees go or whatever,
yeah.
When you are a professional athlete from a very young age...
As you know.
and you have the body of a god,
Yeah.
It does take its toll when you get to your 30s.
I wonder what it's...
At
30s?
My knees really struggled at 30s because I was...
What were you
Can
playing?
you remember that?
I thought 30s. No.
Can you
not
do a
much.
quad?
Quad. Can you imagine? Yeah, but that's a body of an angel.
I'd love to know what you think about the way Valieva's been trained and treated, I think, in the last few
Do you remember that? Sorry, very quickly. Do you remember that gymnast, Olga
Corbett?
Yeah.
She was tiny and looked malnourished as well, and what they put her through as well.
Yeah.
Well, they used to give them drugs to stop puberty, didn't they?
Oh, I mean, East German swimmers ended up looking like men, to be honest, because they filled them so full of testosterone. That's right, yeah.
Look, we need to leave it on that cheery note.
No time for cats.
No time for cats.
We'll do cats next time.
Mike, Liz, thank you both very much indeed.
Lovely.
Thank you. Shall we move on? The new MP for Southend West, Anna Firth, revealed for the first time on GB News that Southend would formally become a city on March the 1st.
Oh,
and
my
of course,
birthday.
Is it? Well, there you ought to have to go there to especially celebrate. It's actually in honour of the late Sir David Amos, who was stabbed to death in October, and he had long campaigned for the seaside town to get city status.
Well, our South East reporter, Ellie Costello, has been out in Southend talking to people there about what the new city status will mean to them.
Sunny Southend, home to sandy beaches, the longest pier in the world, and of course, it's fish and chips.
Delicious.
From the 1st of March, this will be the UK's newest city. It's an exciting time for this seaside town.
Today marks the end of a jam-packed City Week to celebrate Southend's newly secured city status. There have been light shows this week, there have been concerts, there have been special signs erected all around the town. And this is in honour of the late Sir David Amos, who was stabbed to death in October. He was the MP here for 24 years, and this is a moment he has long campaigned for.
There's been a big conversation here in Southend about what city status means for this town. I've been speaking to local people about what it means for them.
I mean, I think it's a really good idea. Hopefully we'll get more investment in the town from businesses. Hopefully more tourists will come. We can kind of compete against the other sort of big seaside towns like Brighton, Bournemouth. Overall, yeah, I think it's a good thing and a good tribute to Sir David Amos.
The thing is, as you say, in infrastructure, we've only got the 2 roads really into Southend.
And one road out. That's the biggest problem.
But yeah, I mean,
I think that will all be addressed in time.
Yes, I think it will.
I think it's great for the community and it's bringing people together. It's a sad situation that has had to happen in, but seeing the concert and how happy it made everyone, I think it's wonderful.
On the 3rd of February 2022, a by-election was held in Southend West, where Anna Firth became the new Conservative MP for the area, following in the footsteps of the late Sir David Amos. She has vowed to honour his legacy.
Sir David Amos was an amazing constituency MP. You know, he must have been one of the UK's finest constituency MPs. And yes, so I'm really aware that I have enormous boots to fill. But having been such a brilliant MP, there's a fantastic legacy here to build on. So I think city status really is going to fall into 3 categories. Number 1 is civic pride. You know, becoming a city has given everybody across Southend a real lift. There's a real sense of enthusiasm. The second thing is cross-party working, because becoming a city isn't about party politics. It's about everybody coming together for the good of Southend, and that's, I think, is going to be a really powerful force. And I'm already chairing a cross-party group which is all about city implementation. And then the third thing, and the most important thing, is using our city status as a catalyst to attract more investment into the town. And one of the things I'm particularly passionate about is applying for UK City of Culture status.
A new MP brings hope that this city can heal from the wounds of last year. And city status opens an exciting new chapter for Southend. Ellie Costello, GB News.
I don't quite get the importance of city status, but then I don't like cities.
Oh, I always thought cities have to have cathedrals, but maybe that's not true anymore.
No, I don't think so.
But I think when you're a city, you get different access to different sorts of funding, I think, for things.
See, that's all about the money, is it?
It usually is, isn't it?
Yeah, because I like towns and villages.
But David Amess always wanted it to be a city, and I just think it's a shame that it took his death to achieve it. Now, he would have loved to have seen it.
I did think that was a little bit odd, because he has campaigned for it for so many years, and then they sort of said, oh, all right, we'll do it because of the tragedy surrounding his death, which I sort of understand it in a way, but it also seems like a sort of
it's a nice
strange
tribute
thing
to
do.
him, though. I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
And if it does mean something like more funding, you're just higher up the rank, I think, when it comes to certain funding from central government. Maybe people, hopefully, in Southend will realise that it's because of him.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah. I mean, it has been achieved because of him. If you're in Southend, let us know what you think. GB Views.
Oh, yeah, and don't forget, please, do take pictures of yourself watching GB News, because we'd like to show them and say hello to you wherever you are in the world.
If that sounds a bit strange to you, if you're just joining us, it's actually really nice. We did it last weekend, didn't we? We've got so many through.
From all over the world.
Yeah, and it's just so nice to see where you are, what you're doing, what you look like, because it's making us all part of one family.
And usually involving your cats and dogs as well. There are plenty of those. GB Views at gbnews.uk. We're also talking about biopics, or are there biopics? Because there's a new one out about Elvis.
Yeah.
And it
will be soon.
Yeah, it's June, I think it's coming out. But they've already released a trailer. I think we
know what you'd like to see in biopics or biopics.
Who do you think deserves a biopic? Yeah,
anyway,
love to hear from you.
All the top stories coming your way in just a moment, so stay with us.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGiven. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank. And so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts during the next few hours. But in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 18th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne, our new home on a Friday.
Yes, we're here on Fridays from now on. We're live on your TV, on your radio and the GB News app. We're also on YouTube, so please make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, and then we know you're there. So wherever you are, please make sure to take us with you. Coming up this morning on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Well, a rare red weather warning for parts of England and Wales as Storm Eunice heads for the UK. Well, she's here already. Hundreds of schools will close in affected areas and trains could be cancelled. Our reporters are up and down the UK, so we'll keep you fully up to date.
Hi, I'm Alice Porter and I'm outside Reading Station giving you the latest on the travel disruption because of Storm Eunice. The Met Office has upgraded their weather warning from amber to red. There are concerns that there will be lots of trains cancelled over London and the South East today.
We'll keep you up to date with all of that, but the deadline is also drawing near for the Prime Minister to formally answer questions about those Downing Street parties. Our political correspondent Tom Harwood is going to join us in the studio a bit later with all those details.
Plus, Southend-on-Sea is finally set to become a city. It'll happen on March the 1st. That's a week on Tuesday. We'll be hearing from the new MP for Southend West about how the Essex town will officially honour the late Sir David Amess as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations.
And don't forget, you can join in on any of our discussions by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews.
Well, loads of you getting in touch already this morning, and it proves, I think, we're a bit of a soft pair when it comes to Kamila Valieva. The Russian skater, the 15-year-old, all the drugs test issue, and then all this pressure that's been on her, and then she didn't do very well yesterday.
No, she literally fell apart. She fell over about 5 times, and it was bad falls as well. She looked, and she was in a mess. I mean, she was just so upset, in tears, the minute she ended. And I can't help thinking she's only 15. And even if the drugs test, which was positive for back in December. Even if that proves to have been, I was going to say her fault. Can it be her fault if she's only 15? People are coaching her, people are looking after her. Can it really be fair to call her a drugs cheat? But as you said, a lot of people watching at the moment aren't so sympathetic.
No. David in Devon says no sympathy at all for the young Russian ice skater. In fact, on a separate subject, I think most countries competing in the Winter Olympics should have boycotted in the first place.
Yeah, Darren says, Darren in Aldershot, hello there. I hope you're looking after yourself in Aldershot. I can't believe how much the Russian ice skater fell over. It was like she wasn't there. I don't think she should have been allowed to skate. However, I have zero sympathy for anyone who's tested positive for drugs in sport.
Now, we'll go back to more of your views a little bit later on. But in the meantime, let's get a check on the weather, because it's a bit of a grim situation for lots of us. The Met Office has issued a rare red weather alert for the east of England, including London, urging people to stay home, warning of a significant danger to life.
Forecasters say the whole of the country will be affected by strong winds as Storm Eunice makes landfall. It's happening now. National Highways have issued an alert for the whole road network. Let's cross to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, I think, who's at Severn Beach. Oh, my goodness, it's looking bad already, Paul.
Yeah, it's a stereotypical reporter shot where they're standing in the wind telling you it's windy, but it is incredible, the whip that is coming off the sea right now. And in fact, if you look into the sky, you can actually see the top of the edge of Storm Eunice, the swirl of it, as it's starting to make landfall in the UK. In the last sort of half an hour, the wind, it was fairly windy, but it has really, really whipped up as it's building up more energy, spurred on by the jet stream in the atmosphere, running at 200 miles an hour, accelerating winds to 90 miles an hour. There is a red warning in place now in the southwest of England and the Bristol and Wales areas. That has now been extended from 10 a.m. across the southeast and across London. Here they are worried about the storm surge, about the tidal surge, about the pressure pushing down on the water as the waves start to come in further towards me as I'm talking to you now, and that storm surge then pushing the water, funneling it up the River Severn upstream, and that is why there are so many flood warnings in place, 10 severe flood warnings in place across the UK, many of them covering the Severn. Out there to see at the moment, that's the Bristol Channel, and then just behind me, that's the Severn Bridge. Beyond that is where the River Severn starts, and they are seriously worried about flooding along here. There is no one around at the moment. Everything that can be battened down has been battened down.
Scary situation, Paul, for people living particularly in that area.
Yeah, people here, I mean, they're used to these kind of situations. Remember the Severn Estuary, the Severn River, I should say, it's the longest river in Great Britain, 220 miles long. It's got the volume of water that flows across it, that flows through it, I should say, more than any other river by far than any other river in England and Wales. So, you know, here they are used to these kind of situations when it comes to flooding, although not these kind of storms. This is you know, certainly the biggest storms here in the UK this century, certainly the worst for, 30 years. So they're not used to these kind of storms, but they are used to flooding, and they're getting ready here, especially further downstream. They'll be getting ready because when the storm passes, of course, the storm surge will continue, the flood surge, I should say, will continue, and the water will be a real threat.
I mean, I know that people obviously are being advised to stay at home if they possibly can today, not to drive, not to go out on the roads, and the rails systems are particularly problematic. But I just wonder, I mean, watching you right now, it's obviously difficult to keep the camera upright. It's almost difficult for you to stand upright too. What does it feel like?
It is absolutely bracing, and a couple of times I've had to hold on to the rail here just next to me to stand still. I mean, I don't think the winds have reached their top speed yet, but they were 60 miles an hour, about an hour ago. They must be up to somewhere near 80 miles an hour now, and they will accelerate to 90, 100 miles an hour later. So at the moment it feels really, really bracing, really strong. I cannot feel my hand, I cannot feel my nose. And let's just abandon all pretense about hair mousse and hair wax and hair gel, right? This is not a day for that today.
Luminick. Paul, stay safe. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. But what is this all going to mean? We've talked about the rail network and the road network and how problematic that could be. Flooding as well. What about energy? Well, let's talk to former CEO of Energy UK, Angela Knight, who joins us. Good to see you this morning. I mean, look, this has to raise concerns about the national grid as well, doesn't it?
Oh, I think we're losing her. It's interesting to know nowadays how it is going to affect things like energy supplies, electricity supplies. I mean, obviously, where there are overhead lines, you know that there is a chance of them coming down. But a lot of electricity now is distributed underground. It's funny, I was talking about this with my children the other day. In the olden days, you always used to have a box of candles under the stairs.
I remember that.
Are we so used to sort of electricity cuts anymore? Do you have a box of candles under the stairs? Or, you know, you used to make sure you have lots of batteries for your torches and things like that.
Well, it's the thing that people have got plenty of candles, but they're the nice smelly ones, aren't they? We just use them as an accessory now rather than a necessity, which they always were.
Yeah. Well, a bit later on we will be talking, hopefully to Angela, if we can get her back up, about the way electricity is distributed and whether or not it's realistic for us all around the country now to expect, perhaps, electricity cuts. I mean, already so many homes have been affected by
and those power lines
storms.
came down, didn't it? And one as electrocuted, it landed on kennels.
That's right.
And killed a load of dogs.
A load of dogs, yeah. appalling.
Awful.
So it is going to be frightening. You probably don't need us to tell you, because I'm sure you know it already, but we'll say it anyway. The warnings are that don't go out if you absolutely don't have to. The storm is going to affect almost everywhere in Britain today. Don't take any risks. You don't have to.
Did someone just say we've got Davy? We're
trying to go around the country and talk to our various reporters in different parts of the country.
Yeah, I mean, in Scotland, of course, with Eunice not particularly badly affected at the moment. Of course, they had Dudley.
They've already had it,
which was pretty grim. Have we got Davy? Someone tell me. No, we still haven't got that. And I think this is part of the problem in terms of communication.
Well, I was going to say it's ironic indeed if we can't actually sometimes get to our reporters to tell you how bad the situation is. But clearly the weather is going to affect absolutely everything.
I mean, certainly in Scotland, there's snow is an issue now, isn't it? I mean, it's just like...
It's one thing on top of another on top of another. It's almost that somebody's got a theory that as soon as we started naming these storms, they seem to get worse.
Yeah.
Maybe we just feel it as personal.
We certainly pay them more attention. Let's see if we can head to West Lothian then, and Davy Donaldson. And just saying, at least you're not getting Eunice to the same degree, but, I mean, the weather's still not very pleasant up there, is it, Davy?
No, the weather's not great at all, you have to say. I'm standing outside Linlithgow station here. Train service is running as normal across Scotland after being suspended yesterday at 4 o'clock. But the day before at 4 o'clock. But it's, I mean, people are just going about their business. It's just normal, really. At the moment, it's trying to snow. It's where I am. It's more sleet than snow. It's more wet, so it's not lying. I think other areas in Glasgow and in Edinburgh, the snow's starting to lie a bit there. So we certainly will see some, but we're certainly not going to see the magnitude of Storm Eunice that we're going to see down in England and across South Wales as well. So, yeah, people just going about their business as normal until they hear otherwise. Obviously, up further north, there's been a lot of snow up in Grampian and the Highlands. You'd expect that, though, given the time of year. It's not unheard of. So it's just really sort of take care as you go about your business, take care as you drive. As I say, the roads are going to be very wet. There's going to be a lot of surface water here, but no sign of trains being cancelled or anything like that. As I say, I think we've missed the real brunt of it here so far. I think the only factor we might see is some snow. I've seen a lot of snowplows while I've been driving around this morning, going various directions. So I think we're going to get a deluge of snow at some point, but how heavy that's going to be, well, we'll just wait and find out.
Look, Davey, we'll catch up with you a little bit later on. For now, thank you. And it is just that situation, wherever you are in the UK, and apologies for my very creaky chair.
Yeah, you have got a creaky chair today.
I need to get the 3-in-1 out. It's it's just grim wherever you are. You're not going to want to leave the house today, are you?
No, and that's the warning. So don't if you can't. If you can possibly avoid it, stay in and watch GB News. We've got plenty. Well, we've got plenty for you to be watching. Thank you. Smooth. Is it a bit too smooth, wasn't it?
No, it's good.
Sorry about that.
I might get my pyjamas on as soon as I get home.
Sure. Yeah, duvet day. Make it a duvet day if you possibly can. If you possibly can. Not everybody can, of course. It's 12 minutes past 7. Should we bring you up to date with what's happening? Ukraine's military says 60 ceasefire violations by pro-Russian separatists have been recorded in the past 24 hours. That comes after Ukraine's foreign minister claimed a village near the city of Luhansk had been shelled from within the occupied territory of Donbass. Boris Johnson is due to attend a major security conference in Munich this weekend to try to de-escalate tensions between Russia and the West.
The Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, has announced plans to create 4,000 prison places across 16 sites by the mid-2020s. The government pledged to increase jail capacity by building new wings and refurbishing old prison spaces.
Prince Harry's High Court claim against a Home Office decision on security will have its first hearing today. The Duke of Sussex is disputing a decision which prevents him from paying for police protection whilst he and his family are in the UK. Harry and Meghan lost their taxpayer-funded security when they quit as senior working royals early last year.
Wales has dropped the use of COVID passes at indoor and outdoor venues. Now, although the restrictions have been scrapped, venues, including sports grounds and nightclubs, have been told they can still demand proof of vaccination if they want to.
And members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are staging strikes this weekend in 3 separate disputes over issues including pay and rosters. Staff on London's Underground Night Tube are taking action this evening. Train managers and senior conductors on Cross Country will be striking on Saturday, and conductors on the Trans-Pennine Express will walk out on Sunday.
A ban on junk food advertising on the London Travel Network is said to have led to healthier shopping habits. The London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has said the TfL ban on foods that are high in fat, salt and sugar has contributed to about a 1,000-calorie decrease in an average weekly household shop. Go on.
I'm sorry, that we've just shown pictures of what they call junk food, which looks really appetising to me right now. And then they said that it's caused stopping those adverts has caused a 1,000-calorie decrease per average household or something. How do they measure that?
And actually,
really?
1,000 calories per household is not a lot.
No, it's not really.
So it's a bit weird.
I just don't understand how they can possibly
I
have
just
got the
fancy a
figures.
pizza now.
Well, me too. One of those burgers, and I'm a vegetarian. I really fancy one of those burgers. Just goes to show, at a certain time of day, you really fancy a nice breakfast.
We should have a little party, shouldn't we?
We should definitely have a breakfast grill here.
Yeah, a breakfast party.
Make a nice bacon sarnie.
Talking of which, the deadline to give an explanation for Partygate looms for the Prime Minister. Boris Johnson has until 10 tonight to reply to the Metropolitan Police questionnaire about whether he broke lockdown rules at Downing Street parties.
Well, we're told that the Prime Minister has been consulting lawyers about his response. But the scandal will draw out longer as Scotland Yard contacts suspects. Our political correspondent Tom Harwood is here in the studio. Tell us what we might expect this evening.
Well, we're not going to see anything public this evening, but it is a significant moment for the Prime Minister and indeed for the Prime Minister's lawyers. The way that this is being structured within Number 10 is that there is a bit of a Chinese wall between the Number 10 political operation and the personal response to this questionnaire. We're told that Boris Johnson is using his own funds, his own lawyers, and keeping it separate from the political operation within Downing Street, which means that journalists like us, when we ask for official comment on this from Downing Street, are given the response that this is a personal matter for the Prime Minister, and his spokespeople are none the wiser. So what will be going on this evening is that Boris Johnson's lawyers will be submitting that questionnaire with various excuses, explanations, whatever we want to call them, in terms of why he attended a couple of those events that are under question. Of course, he has admitted to attending most particularly that garden drinks party in May 2020.
But it isn't... sorry, I was going to say, but it isn't personal, is it? Because, I mean, it was personal to all of us whether or not we had parties during COVID restrictions. And no matter how much he says it's personal, it isn't. It's public knowledge. We need to know.
Certainly, there'll be many people who will want to see the responses to this. The Liberal Democrats, as a party, are submitting what's called a humble address in Parliament next week, which will try and publish all of these documents once the investigation has concluded. What Number 10 says throughout this investigation is that while it's going on, this stuff can't be made public, lest it prejudice the investigation itself. Although I think that there is a difference here between what went on in Number 10 as a whole and what Boris Johnson as an individual attended. It's not the business of government if, for example, as one of the allegations is, Carrie Johnson and Boris Johnson had some friends round to their flat. That is a personal matter that they will need to deal with. They, of course, deny that allegation. But it is going to be a tricky situation for all of those involved. We know that well over several dozen people will have been alleged to be at these different events and are responding to these questionnaires, the deadline for which is 10 p.m. tonight.
Does it strike you as a little bit odd that we're talking about lawyers getting involved and all this, hoo-ha going on? I mean, if any of us were presented with this questionnaire, we would be expected to fill it in honestly and return it. Why doesn't he just fill it in honestly and return it?
I suppose that it's quite a complicated set of issues, given that retrospective investigations from the Metropolitan Police when it comes to COVID rule-breaking are extraordinarily rare. Ordinarily for COVID rule breaking, what the police had was a system of trying to explain first, then trying to encourage, then trying to engage before actually pursuing any action. That was their step process. So it took quite a high bar for actually any fixed penalty notices to be handed down. So this is quite an unusual situation that we're seeing now with regard to a Metropolitan Police investigation. Some might say, some enemies of the Prime Minister might say it's a convenient investigation because, of course, it hobbled that Sue Gray report.
Well, the potential for obfuscation is enormous, isn't it? We're just going to end up with something that's just so full of flummery, we won't be able to see the wood for the trees.
Well, potentially, and of course, there's no obligation to publish what is being sent to the Metropolitan Police tonight. Now, there are certain parliamentary ways in which the opposition could try and force publication. As I mentioned, that humble address motion, this is an ancient, it's something written down in Erskine May in the traditions of Parliament, whereby an opposition can actually force a binding motion upon Parliament, quite a rare thing to do. That's one way in which we might be able to see this, but ultimately there's no obligation. The police, when they conduct a report, don't ordinarily publish a report in the way that Sue Gray might. Now, there'll be political pressure for the full Sue Gray report to be published after the conclusion of the Metropolitan Police investigation. But I don't think we should sit here expecting that the Metropolitan Police investigation will be something that is being designed for public consumption in its entirety.
No, I imagine not, but we'll find out if he gets a fine or not eventually.
We will. Number 10's committed to saying that if Boris Johnson himself gets a fixed penalty notice, that'll be made public.
You know, I mean, it's almost worth asking everybody, do you care anymore? I mean, are you just so fed up with this Partygate thing? Do you care anymore? Or should we still care about it?
Yeah, GBviews at gbnews.uk would be good to get your thoughts on that. Tom, thanks very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Plenty more still to come, though, because we have your sports update with Paul Coit in just a couple of minutes. But first, it's weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank, and so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts during the next few hours, but in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile-per-hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds, and risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile-per-hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is 7:25. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio and online this morning.
Yep, time now for a look at the biggest sporting events taking place. And we're joined in the studio by sports broadcaster Paul Coit. Nothing to talk about at the moment, really.
No, not really. No, it's just a bit of wind and that's it. Kite flying is probably the future of sport now, and that's about all.
Go on, a bit UEFA.
Well, Europa League yesterday, I mean, this was, I don't want to discredit Rangers, but I think everybody would think this was a shock result, and especially in Dortmund. You've got Borussia Dortmund, one of the great sides of the Champions League, at home against Rangers, and Rangers absolutely tore them apart. Which is an incredible result. So they won 4-2, so that was fantastic. So that was really, really good performance by them. Celtic, not so good. They played against a team I'm sure you're familiar with called Bodo Glimt.
Oh, one of my favourites.
One of your favourite? I thought it was a painter, but apparently they are a Norwegian football club called Bodo Glimt, and they actually got beaten by Bodo Glimt, which wasn't so good. Whereas Leicester played Randers, which is not the game like baseball when you play it in Essex. It's actually a Danish team called Randers, and they won 4-1. And so they've been bad, Leicester, so that was a good result for them.
Yeah.
So that was all good.
On to Anne's favourite sport of the
Well,
moment.
yeah.
Sport du jour.
Yeah, I've got two sports du jour. One is the ice dancing, obviously, and the other is the curling. I can't believe how brilliant we are at curling.
Well, I know. The thing is, it's about time. We have to wait for the medal. It's going to be like the London buses. I think it's a possibility they may come at the same time. So as far as the women are concerned, because they were all but out. I mean, it really was. It was not looking good at all. And the way that they would actually win is if they managed to beat the Russians and then other results went their way, which was still seemed unlikely. Well, it did, so everything was fine. So they're now in the semi-final against Sweden, so that happens later.
So we've got a chance of a medal with the women's curlers.
We absolutely do. And then the final for the men is also against Sweden, and that's tomorrow morning at 6:05.
And that means we are guaranteed silver.
We are guaranteed silver, which I would say it's a very successful Winter Olympics for us then.
Yeah.
If we win something.
Well, yeah.
I mean, someone emailed earlier on, actually, what have I done with me news and views?
Right.
Saying, why haven't we won anything? Why haven't we won a thing so far?
OK, you know what, there is a theory. There is a theory about that, and, well, that's actually quite a few.
This is from Tony.
OK, Tony. I think one of the things is, obviously, winter sports is not really our thing. We don't really have enough snow to be taking on Norway and Switzerland and Russia, etc., etc. But the other thing that actually has made a difference is probably COVID, because a lot of our athletes would then go abroad and they would train in the right climes. They would be involved in...
Yes.
That stopped them
so
for a
their
year.
travel has been restricted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, we've had a lot of bad luck as well, which we always seem to do. No matter what sport it is, it could be the Eurovision Song Contest and still we have bad luck. It's just one of those things that goes along with
What about things like ice dancing, though? I mean, we always used to get medals.
We look at John Curry, we had Robin Cousins, Torvill and Dean. For some reason, that's just not the same. But then again, if you look at the coach Eteri Tudobredzi, I think is her name.
She's the Russian coach.
She's a piece of work, isn't she? And she's the one that's coached the 15-year-old and the two 17-year-olds, so Valieva, Shebakova and Trusova. It's interesting that the one whose name doesn't have over in the name is the one that did fall over actually in the final, which was just so... It was... I don't know, I just found it such a difficult watch. The whole thing has been so uncomfortable. The 15-year-old accused of drugs. There's been 3 drugs that have been found on her. She's 15 years old, and so much pressure. So when it got to the long programme yesterday, and absolutely everybody assumed that she would just go out and win the gold medal.
Yes.
And also, do we look at that and think, well, she's 15, it's too much pressure? But often the younger they are, the less pressure people in sports people tend to
don't always
feel.
know what she's been told.
Of course.
No.
But I think you only had to watch her performance to see that she was under.
She was under, and she looked scared. I mean, you can see these quadruples, they call them the quad squad because they're the only female ice dancers that actually managed to land these quadruple salchows, quadruple spins in the air. First one she goes for, she wobbled on. The next one she fell, and then she fell again. And then there was the girl that came second, who managed to land 5 of these. She was absolutely livid about the whole situation, saying, I want to quit ice skating. I hate this. I hate everything to do with it. And you just look at it and think, this is a 17-year-old. Is it truly, truly worth it? And they're probably going to be too old in 4 years.
So what about the coach? Because I mean, Valieva...
Yeah.
I mean, she got a mouthful, didn't she, when she came off the ice?
Yeah, she's on the ice, and she's being told, oh, you should ignore this, or whatever was said. But this, you don't imagine...
She has a reputation, this coach, for being very excessively hard.
Of course, and we've seen that in a lot of sports, and probably in
particularly
the
in
Eastern Bloc over the year, going back a long way. With gymnastics as well, we've seen it. She sat there, and you could see she had her arm round her. There wasn't a lot of love there, and you just think, this is a 15-year-old. You need your mum and dad at times.
And we were worried about what that child, 15-year-old child, goes back to. I mean, does she go back branded a failure, or will she get the love and support she needs? You worry.
I sort of doubt it, really.
I'll be surprised, and I think in another 4 years' time for the next Olympics, will she be around? Will any of those 3 be around? Will the coach be now thinking, right, I've got some 13-year-olds now that are better than you, can probably spin 5 times, you're out the door.
Yeah.
And it's just so much work and so much time and so much heartache and pain that they're going to... I'm saying like I'm doing a song here, but they get to the end of this, and it's like you're left with nothing. And was it you that was actually the person that wanted the drug? You're a 15-year-old. There's no way it was down to this.
If we were to look at our record now and say, why aren't we getting the ice dancing medals that we used to get?
Right.
Is it because we're not putting enough money into it? Or is it because you simply can't, up against coaches like the woman whose name I can't pronounce, up against that, we wouldn't stand a chance anyway?
Well, we can look back on athletics, we can look back on a lot of sports, going back 20, 30 years, and especially when drugs were rife with the Eastern Bloc. And you think, well, I mean, there is even world records. I mean, I'm going off slightly, but we look at like a 400-metre world record, which still stands from 40 years ago. We know why. Everybody knows why. You can't compete against that. But also there's another matter of funding. There's going to be a situation where there's going to be arguments that are saying, well, look, we've given £20 million there to our Winter Olympics. How comes that's not succeeded? Do you then take it away and say you're not going to get it this time? The bobsleigh, we've got people in the bobsleigh, and I've spoken to these fellas that have tried to get their own funding. This is not a cheap sport to be involved in. And they're going round, they're getting sponsored by people, they're having to just raise all their own money because they haven't got enough money to be able to do it. So to actually get anywhere, and they do pretty well considering the funding that they're given, it's just not there. So what do? Do we give all the money and then go, right, there's even more, let's have more success, or take it as it is?
Well, maybe that's one we throw out to everybody watching at the moment.
Stick with the curling.
GBNews.
Stick with the curling.
What do you do? Do we sink more money into it, or say, oh, we're no good at winter sports?
I sort of think it's throwing good money after bad, personally. When we're short of money, everyone's desperate for a bit of money. The NHS and schools and everybody else need more money. It's just throwing good money after bad. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let us know. Paul Coit.
Thank you.
I would say it's been a joy, but, we've got another go, haven't we?
It was, yeah. It was all a bit down, that one, wasn't it? It was a bit down in the dumps. I'm ever so sorry,
It's controversial from time to time.
Take the good, you take the bad. What can I do?
Anyway, do stay with us because we'll be looking over today's front pages after the break, so don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
"7:35, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio and online.
Let's take a look at today's front pages now. And the Mail says we're braced for a dangerous weather phenomenon known as the Sting Jet, which is apparently a narrow-focused region of exceptionally strong wind. I haven't got my teeth in this morning.
Well, this week I shall mostly be staying in bed.
That's a good headline.
It is, yeah, not a bad idea. As the Star says, as the storm could last for days.
The Sun, meanwhile, calls it a killer storm. As the Met Office says, there's a significant danger to life. Troops are on standby, apparently, to aid rescue efforts.
Well, away from the storm, the Daily Mirror has found that thousands of vulnerable care home residents have been forced out of private care homes.
To Ukraine and Russia, tensions in the Telegraph, which says that Russia has begun false flag attacks after an attack on a nursery in a Ukraine village.
And in the Financial Times this morning, it says President Biden has warned allies that Russian troops could launch an assault within days.
So time to go through the insides of the papers now. Joining us this morning, journalist Mike Parry and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Mike, you're starting off with the Post Office, and this is a scandal that I cannot believe we're not up in arms about.
I totally agree. This is one of the greatest scandals of our age, OK? 700 cases of postmasters/mistresses being accused of robbing the post office for huge amounts of money, some up to £200,000. Now, a lady who was in charge of the post office a lot of that time was Paula Venables, OK? I make no judgment on that because there's an inquiry going on at the moment into the whole horrible fiasco. But what I would say is this. When we all grew up, didn't we think the post office was the safest building in the village, the safest building in town? It had a big red letterbox outside it, and the person inside the post office was usually a middle-aged man or a middle-aged lady who were a friend to you as well as serving behind the counter.
You knew everybody and everything.
Knew everybody, did everything, helped you with your parcels, passed them through the window, run down the road after the postman, take this letter and all that kind of stuff. So the point I'm making here is, how could anybody who was in charge of the post office see all these cases mounting up because the computer had gone wrong and not work out, hang on, how come we've suddenly got 700 crooked crooked postmasters, postmistresses, without somebody turning round with a bit of common sense in their head and saying, no, actually, postmasters and postmistresses don't do that. They're not dishonest. They're the salt of the community.
And what was even worse is not only did they not join up the thinking on that, but they deliberately kept each individual postmaster and mistress in the dark about the fact that it was happening to anyone else.
They did. When they accused somebody, they didn't say, oh, don't worry, you're not on your own, because, as you quite rightly say, that would establish a pattern. These individual people were so shocked at their integrity and their honesty being challenged, some of them have committed suicide. Many hundreds of them have lost their lives, their homes, their reputation. I saw one lady talking only last night, even though she's now been cleared, within her own community, 50% of the people that used to be her customers shun her still in the street, because they're not convinced that, there wasn't something going on.
It's the whole no smoke without fire attitude,
Absolutely.
isn't it? And it's this it was the Horizon system.
Yes.
And there's an argument to say the Post Office knew it wasn't working properly actually before any of these cases were brought.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
I saw that suggested the other evening that somebody at the top knew it was a computer thing and just carried on covering it up.
Yeah.
But some people were sent to jail.
People have served time, men, women. As Mike says, there've been suicides, there've been deaths because people have just,
just
the
wasted
health
away.
It's terrible. It really is.
They were the most honest members of our communities, weren't they? That's the way we looked, and that's why we went and bought our stamps to put a stamp on your mum's birthday card. Those were the sort of people, they were always there for us.
I can't believe why we're not making more of it.
Well, I'm making more of it, and I wish other people would join me in my rage for the terrible,
The whole post office thing, though, is so badly run. I mean, look at the way... There's a post office near me, and it's one of the Crown buildings, sort of built in the 50s.
Yeah.
It had mahogany counters and brass rails and all that.
Beautiful.
Now you can go in it to collect a parcel, but it's got a big sign up saying, this is not a post office.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how ridiculous. Meanwhile, the post office is now right at the back of a Spar shop.
Oh.
Right.
All plastic, and you have to go past all the cornflakes to find it. It's been so badly managed.
Oh, it's shocking. Mine local one is now in the back of WH Smith's, okay?
Yeah.
And you can't even find it. You've got to get past Punch magazine and the Times before you find the post office.
Mine is an off-licence.
Really? Yeah. Oh, well, I wouldn't object to that.
Gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Liz, to the Times, being an MP is not a dream job.
Yeah, well, this is in the same category, isn't it? Who wants to be a post office, a postmaster or mistress now? The risks are horrendous, or they have been. Same thing with MP. So, I used to think I'd love to be an MP. In fact, I was approached once. I was at an MP's flat in Westminster, and I stepped out onto the balcony. I was approached by a figure out of the shadows saying, would you like to be an MP? And I said, I'd love to, but not while I've got kids at school. And I thought, when I got to my stage of life, I'd love it. But I'm not so sure now. And a YouGov poll for the Times found that just 7% of people wanted to be a member of Parliament very much. And I think, obviously, the death of 2 MPs and the stabbing of a third one just before that won't have helped. You get so much abuse now, don't you? And an actual physical threat or assault. And I've never thought it was a good job for somebody to be so far away from home. It's terrible for anybody with a family, but especially a woman with young kids. It's such an antisocial lifestyle.
It is.
I think more could be done to make it... I mean, it's no wonder MPs still want to stay at home, is it, after 2 years of being on Skype?
I actually disagree with you, Liz, on this. There's not much I disagree with you on, but a bloke knocked on my door once, and he was campaigning. He was a local MP candidate. And I said, why should I vote for you? He said, I will make your life better. And I said, no, you've got it the other way round, mate. You've got it the wrong way round. If I vote for you, I make your life better. You go to the House of Commons, you get $200,000 a year when you add up all your expenses and the housing allowances you get, right? You get long holidays in the summer and you swan around in one of the most privileged clubs, i.e. the House of Commons, in history. Now, obviously, there's a few down parts to being an MP, but mostly speaking, you are up there and you're coining it in and you're given respect by the community.
Most people in Parliament... could earn a lot of them could earn more.
A lot of them couldn't. A lot of them couldn't earn the job as running a whelk stall on Southend Pier, to be honest.
A lot of them could earn more, and if I don't think that for the hours per hour, you know, they're on less than the guy who comes to fix my dishwasher. So I think that to attract the calibre of person, you need to pay well and you need to get the conditions right. I don't like all the 650 of them, obviously, but I don't think... I can understand why people don't think it's the first choice for a career when they could be making a fortune being a barrister or...
They make a lot of money,
doctor.
MPs. Well, you'd never see an MP in a small house, do you?
Well,
Seriously?
no, I would disagree. I mean, they get, what is it, 80 grand they're on? I mean, that is a lot of money, but it's not the 200 grand and all that business.
Oh, no, they do. You look at their expenses,
don't.
you look at their housing allowance.
They don't, because all that goes through IPSA and everything.
Exactly.
So
they employ their own wives and children in their offices, and they get paid for that. And then on top of all that, of course, we see them taking a few quid here and there, lobbying for companies and all that. It's, you know, I don't feel sorry for any MP.
You can't tar them all with the same brush. However, let's talk about what happens to your brain at 60. A bit worried about this.
Yeah, right. Now, a person's mind as sharp as ever until the age of 60, a study suggests. Earlier research had said that the brain slowed down after the age of 20. Now, I'm not sure I believe this because I think, and millions of people out there will disagree, I got sharper after 60, not before 60. Because my life was too cluttered before the age of 60, and there were Stephen, that's not very kind, is it?
It's not kind.
To burst out laughing.
I'm not being kind. I'm not a kind person. That's not true.
Yeah. But I found, actually, that I was more focused after the age of 60. So perhaps it was the fact that I'd finished paying the mortgages. Perhaps it was the fact that I didn't have to kowtow to my bosses as much as I used to because the job wasn't that important for that much longer, that sort of thing. And I became absolutely focused. Almost a different person. I started saying no a lot, you know, and I started picking and choosing what I wanted to do. Well, you know, whatever I really did.
I started saying no a lot.
Can I just say, I was
I
at Liz Kershaw's 60th birthday party.
Right, okay.
She wasn't very sharp by the end of it.
I can believe that.
The article, it's in all the papers and they have a different slant on it. The article's saying you don't lose your brain faculty after 60, and we can be reassured.
Yes.
They were measuring reaction time, and it just you've got the same amount of ability and capacity to process information, and you're as sharp. It's just that the older brain is more considered. So if you're given a choice of buttons to press, the older brain will take a fraction, a millisecond longer to make the right decision. So it's all about wisdom. But I think every morning we do in our hours, we do all the quizzes, the Telegraph quiz, the Times quizzes, the word puzzles, and I think, it exercise your brain.
Oh, you've got to exercise your brain.
Yeah.
You do. You do.
You're definitely more measured in your responses, I agree. You know, when we were in the height of our careers, in the middle of a newsroom, and somebody said something, you'd snap back instantly, and then by tomorrow morning's paper, you realise you'd made completely the wrong decision. But you had to get it in first, you know what I mean? It's that sort of attitude, really.
You're going to slow down a bit as you get older. I mean, that's just natural.
Well, there you are, Stephen. When you get to 60, you'll learn how to say no.
Or yes to the odd cocktail, which slows down your brain.
That's true.
I mean, I'm very different to how I was when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, well, I think...
No, we're all different.
Everybody does, yeah. But wisdom can only come with age, can't it? I mean, that's a fact of life. And
experience.
You're wiser at 60 than you were at 30, so to speak.
Yeah, all 30.
I do better at quizzes where I can take a bit of time to think about.
Yes, exactly.
Which our university challenge, I'm always pressing the pause button.
Hang
on a minute, I'll get it.
Oh, I can never get a question on University Challenge.
I can, but sometimes it takes quite a while to get it. Have we got time to talk about working from home, Liz?
Well, very quickly, it's just to say that most of the country, and I noticed this when I was up in the northwest last weekend, is, back on the roads. Everywhere's packed, back to work, queuing buses, everything. In London, however, just 18 to 20% of people...
Outrageous.
And it's because the people working in, say, the city, for example, are more highly paid office staff, and they can work from their home office or kitchen. And also, a lot of people choosing to retire, same in the United States, just dropping out of the workforce. So big city firms are having to give them all sorts of sweeteners just to keep them working for them. And one of them, of course, is, yes, you can still work.
But
from home.
it's an outrage, isn't it?
But it's the different. Apparently, it's different here than it is in the rest of the country. I haven't wandered around Bishopsgate or Liverpool Street recently, but it's quite stark.
Oh, I have. It's
apparently.
absolutely deserted. I went down Cheapside the other day, you know, behind St Paul's Church, from one location to another. It is absolutely deserted. And we all work in a creative industry called the media, don't we? How could we possibly work from home all the time? If I didn't bump into you in the corridor and say, hey, Anne, did you see that on the television last night? You'd say something, which would then spark an idea in me, and I'd go and tell Liz, hey, what do you think about that? And I'd go to Stephen and say, can we find somebody to do this?
But I do worry about people's... Because there are so many IT companies starting up now, and young people particularly working in IT, and they are being... persuaded to work from home a lot.
And they don't
I'm
make
not sure
friends.
it's very good for them.
They don't make friends. I mean, I can't remember the stat, but so many people, so many of us have met a partner at work.
Absolutely.
Haven't we? You know, you get office romances, and that's not happening anymore, is it?
No, definitely.
I interviewed. I've been doing a lot of interviews from home, and the technology is amazing. So yesterday, interviewing somebody in Miami, I'm in Northamptonshire, the producer's in London, this other guy from the BBC is in Bristol. The technology, and it was Andy Bell from Erasure.
Oh, Andy Bell.
Yeah, lovely guy. He says he's going to swing by, so he'll come round when he does.
All right.
Because you're a fan of Erasure.
Well, back in the day, they were amazing. Look, we're almost out of time, Liz. I just want to very quickly look at the Sun and Ronaldo.
Oh, yes. Well, Ronaldo, who thought this got another string to his bow or brow? He's opening expanding his hair replacement clinics.
Amazing.
No, he had any.
No, he has. He's got a few, but he's going global with it. So, do you think he's had it done?
He probably has.
It wouldn't be any shame if he had. Wayne Rooney was the first footballer to admit, I've had my hair done.
Yeah.
And
it's very effective now.
And he put a picture of it on his own Twitter account. He said, you'll want to see it.
And he can't tell. I had mine done about 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Well,
and I had a big widow's peak, and it was going on the middle there. But you shouldn't call it transplant because you just take a bit out the back and rearrange it.
Yeah. Well,
I always say, what do you think? I always say if Princess Diana was still alive, Prince William would have a full head of hair.
Yeah.
Could well be.
That's Harry.
I went to Wayne Rooney's clinic in Harley Street and asked for a consultation. They told me not to bother.
Why?
Why?
Well, it wasn't going to work without extensive treatment, they said.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just stand on your head and then you'll have a beard on top and the other
Good
bit.
thinking, Liz. Practical northern suggestion.
Yeah. Oh, mine only took a day. It took a day.
Yeah.
I think it's
a bit
brilliant.
of recovery time.
Yeah, but I felt fine. Didn't hurt, nothing. It was great.
No, I think it's brilliant. Really
Jimmy
is.
Nesbitt had one done, didn't he? It was quite spectacularally good.
Well, Elton John was the most famous one first, wasn't he, really?
But he complained about his...
He had about 3 goals at it, didn't he?
Yeah, but it never succeeded for Elton.
No, he had about 3 attempts.
They kept falling out, apparently.
He's still got a syrup on.
Has he?
Anyway, we've got an MP waiting, so you two are allowed to go.
Sorry.
Oh, OK.
Right. But tell them I don't want their job.
Liz, Mike, thank you both very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, let's talk to Labour's Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, Steve Reid, who I think is joining us any second now.
There he is.
Hello, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. There are so many things to talk about today. First of all, what's your thoughts on Ukraine at the moment? The shelling's continuing, people are getting frightened, but every time we interview a different expert, they have a different timetable on whether anything's going to happen at all.
Well, the truth is we don't know for certain, do we? But we can see the build-up of Russian troops on the border around Ukraine. And despite Putin's claims that he was going to start withdrawing them, we're getting a lot of intelligence from the West to say that there are more troops being put in. So it is a very worrying and volatile situation. And I think the key issue for us here is Putin wants to divide the West. And it's important we all stand together. So Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has been absolutely clear. The Labour Party will stand foursquare behind government on this one and show a united front to potential Russian aggression. You know, it does feel like something from another age that one country in Europe might invade another country in Europe. It sounds more like the 1930s than it does to me like the 2020s where we are today. So we have to keep absolutely resolute and show Russia that if they do take the very dangerous step of invading the Ukraine, then there will be severe consequences for them. And the West has put together a package of sanctions that will hurt the Russians and Putin and the oligarchs in Russia very, very hard.
It does seem almost inconceivable, doesn't it, to most of us that this, as you said, can happen in the 21st century. One would have thought diplomacy would always prevent this sort of thing happening again.
Well, it always should, but of course there are bullies in this world, and Vladimir Putin's one of them. And while we do need to show a united front against what he's trying to do here, we do need to look at some of the things the government has failed to do over the last 10 years to tackle some of the behaviour of Russia. For instance, we had the cross-party Russia report in Parliament about Russian interference in our democracy that the government has simply shelved and ignored. There are very worrying allegations of the amount of Russian money that is being laundered through London, through the City of London, that the government's kind of just sat back on and done nothing. All of this facilitates Putin in doing the things that he's doing in Ukraine. So we need the government to look much more squarely now on what they failed to do to stop Putin doing these kind of things around the world, whether it's interfering in democracies, whether it's laundering money. But we need a united front against this threat of aggression in the immediate situation in the Ukraine.
Our attention a little bit closer to home, because I mean there's a lot of concern. There's always concern about migration, but certainly the EU doesn't seem to be playing ball at the moment over any sort of deal between the EU and Britain over how to control migration a little bit better. I mean, Italy's threatening to veto the migration deal. I mean, this just isn't fair, is it?
Well, I think the situation here is that we're seeing an awful lot of people trying to get to the UK. Many of them are being brought here by people traffickers. And we really ought to be looking at what we're doing to stop those people traffickers who are responsible for getting people in a position where they're being put in the boats, for instance, that are so dangerous going across the water. The UK government cut the international aid budget. A large proportion of that would have been used to tackle people trafficking. So our government needs to get serious about this as well as other countries. I don't think we can just put the blame elsewhere. We need to look to ourselves as well.
There is this argument about sharing the burden, and certainly one government source has said everybody wants burden sharing until they have to share the burden themselves. I mean, is there an anti-Britain sentiment, do you think, in the EU when it comes to this?
I certainly don't pick that up at all. There's an absolute need for international cooperation about cross-border crimes like people trafficking. But if the UK sends the signal that it's cutting its funding to stop the people trafficking, what does that say to the people that we want to collaborate with, we want to cooperate with? It says that we're going soft. It says that we're not being serious. And I think the government needs to show that it's prepared to play its part to stop a problem that we all want to see ended.
And finally, just before we leave you, any words of advice for Boris Johnson tonight? He's got to get his reply to the police in by 10 p.m. on Partygate.
Well, I hope Boris Johnson will be absolutely honest and frank in a way that he hasn't been to Parliament, unfortunately, about this issue recently.
There, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Steve Reid there, Shadow Secretary of State for Justice.
Well, stay with us here on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We've got the very latest on Storm Eunice in just a moment.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank. And so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts during the next few hours. But in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and a risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
Hello, mate. Step into the studio, please.
How are you keeping? Busy?
I've got a brand new show coming on GB News called the Friday Night Feast.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to take a new news angle on the week's biggest stories. Move it forward. I want to talk about what I think we should be talking about, not what we're being told that we have to. Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. A brand new show right here on GB News, the Friday Night Feast, 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. with me, Patrick Christie's. What could possibly go wrong, eh? Oh, I've left my wallet in a cab.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's already 8 o'clock. Very good morning to you. It's Friday, the 18th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
and we're live on your TV, on your radio and the GB News app. We're also on YouTube, and if you watch us there, then do subscribe, and then we know where you are and who you are. Well, not exactly who you are, but you know what I mean.
Get an idea.
We know you're there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, you can take us with you wherever you want. Coming up this morning on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah, it's not good news, I'm afraid. A rare red weather warning for parts of England and Wales as Storm Eunice heads for the UK. Hundreds of schools will close in affected area. Trains could be cancelled. We've got reporters up and down the UK to keep us all up to date.
Hi, I'm Alice Porter and I'm outside Reading Station giving you the latest on the travel disruption because of Storm Eunice. The Met Office has upgraded their weather warning from amber to red. There are concerns that there will be lots of trains cancelled over London and the South East today.
Also, the deadline is drawing near for the Prime Minister to formally answer those questions about Downing Street parties. Our political correspondent Tom Harwood will join us in the studio a bit later on with all the details.
Plus, we're going to be talking to Dr. Amika, who's going to answer all of your medical questions, so keep them coming through this morning.
Yeah, and don't forget you can join in on any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews.
Interesting, when we were talking about Partygate a little bit earlier on, you said, well, what, do people care anymore about all of this? Well, it's still a bit of a mixed bag, but a lot of them saying no, they don't care. Annie is from the other point of view. She says, of course we should still care about Boris's outrageous leadership. It's nothing to do with his parties, but his integrity. He hopes if he distracts us for long enough, we won't care anymore. But the British public have to make him accountable. He can't keep wasting taxpayers' money.
No, and I mean, well, with any luck, it'll come to a head. I've just been trying to get that on my computer as well, and I pressed the bin.
Oh, have you deleted it
by
mistake?
accident?
Never mind.
How do I get around that? I don't know.
Oh, I'll
have you
show
ever done that? You want to press on a thing and you press the bin by accident.
Mistake, yeah.
You spend the next 2 hours trying to retrieve something from a bin.
BB Brewer, which has got to be the best name ever. I love that. You sound like a jazz artist, BB. Says, I never did care about Partygate. The way I see it, they were all essential workers mixing together anyway. Whether they had tea and biscuits, cheese and wine, or did an online quiz, I don't see what all the fuss is about.
See, this is what I wonder, is whether time goes on long enough, we actually sort of shrug our shoulders and forgive, or at least forget. And, of course, there are other things going on in the world that you hope the Prime Minister and everybody clever inside Number 10 is actually addressing.
Yeah, well, Brian in Leeds says we need to move on, and there are more important things to be sorted out than keeping going on about a party. Well,
that's what I mean. It's now such a long time ago, we wonder whether we care. Or was that Number 10's thought all along? Play it out for as long as possible.
But when you are in a group of people who are working together anyway,
yes,
and you're sort of having to head into the office, I mean, like I was at the point when I was heading into the office, and if someone, we had cups of tea together and things, we didn't have bottles of wine and cheese, but I mean, is there
much of a difference?
I
don't
don't know.
Do you think our minds will change over time? I think that's the main thing. We'd love to hear from you on your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, it's one of those issues where genuinely, I don't know.
No, I go from one extreme to the other almost. It's when we hear stories of people who lost people during COVID, who couldn't go to funerals, who couldn't be by their loved ones' bedsides, and you think at the same time people in Number 10 were having a jolly. Or maybe...
But life
that's
goes
not the
on,
point.
doesn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know. So it's why we need your thoughts on that this morning, as well as anything else you want to talk about, including the weather, of course, because millions of us are bracing for what they're calling dangerous conditions as winds from Storm Eunice prompted 2 rare red weather warnings for much of southeast of England and also parts of Wales.
Now, the Met Office is urging people to stay at home, warning of significant danger to life. We have reporters this morning in Bristol, Reading and West Lothian. Our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, is at Severn Beach, where the effects of Storm Eunice is being felt around the Bristol area there. Hello there. How are you doing at the moment, Paul?
Yeah, hi Anne. Morning, Stephen. Yeah, we're doing all right actually. There's a lot of spray coming off the sea. When we spoke to you last, you could see Severn Beach. Severn Beach has completely disappeared now. If I just step out of shot, you can see the water here has come right inland, pushed down by the pressure of Storm Eunice. It's funneling the water up the Severn estuary, up the Severn River, which starts just behind the bridge behind me. So the spray is now coming off the sea. The sea levels are really rising. We've spoken to a few guys from the council that are out and about. They're distributing sandbags, or they've got sandbags available to be collected by residents who are just here on the seafront here. You can see they're not far here from the coastline. The sandbags are available for them should they feel that they need it if the water does breach the coastline here. But there are people out and about at the moment. Look, you can see there in the distance there are some guys walking their dogs. In fact, the gentleman on the right over there said that his dog was loving it because he gets an extra 30 yards on the ball at the moment. But he did say that in a couple of hours' time they will be staying inside and battening down the hatches.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. Let's head to Scotland. Davy Donaldson is there, and since we last saw you, Davy, I mean, those skies above you look more leaden than we've seen so far this morning.
Yeah, very much so, Stephen. No doubt about that. I'm down by the coast now as well, so you can see how choppy the sea is. Certainly, the winds are getting up. It's getting stronger. We're getting more rain. We've had a lot of snow flurries, but as yet, it's not really lying in this area. I know that in Glasgow and Edinburgh, further north in Grampian and the Highlands, there is starting to lie up that way, but so far not in this area. But definitely the wind's starting to get up. A lot of sleet, heavy driving, sleet and rain, which is going to cause problems. But the temperature's not really got down enough so in order to get that snow that would actually cause a lot of chaos on the roads and perhaps to the transport network.
Yeah, transport network is the problem with all of this. And Alice, I mean, you're at Reading Station, aren't you? I mean, there's clearly going to be a lot of travel disruption today.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many cancelled trains. I mean, Reading is the second biggest interchange of people coming in and out of London. I mean, normally you get 140 trains come from here into London, but my goodness me, almost all of them seem to be cancelled. I think the good news is that a lot of people have heeded the travel advice and actually haven't come to the station, so it's quite quiet. But for the people who've made it here, it's very difficult to know whether they'll make it in or out of London at all. And it's very difficult because, of course, not everyone can work from home, and some people still have to get into work. But there are severe disruptions across the rail network, across the whole of the UK. All trains are suspended in Wales. Great Western Railway, which operates from London through to Bristol down to Penzance, they're operating at half their normal capacity. And if you do manage to get on a train, well, it's going to go pretty slow because there's a blanket speed ban in place. It's not going more than 50 miles per hour, and that's because of the strong winds which are expected. I mean, the weather warning was upgraded late last night, going from amber to red, and that comes into effect here in London, Reading and the South East in about 2 hours' time. And it's incredibly unusual to have a red weather warning for this part of the country, and the real concern is what happens when the wind picks up any debris and whether any of that can fall on the tracks.
Yes, you were saying earlier, I know, Alice, it's not just the fact of the trains being cancelled or trains just making it through being buffeted by the wind. It's also the fact that debris, obviously, the minute it gets onto the tracks, causes even more problems.
Absolutely. I mean, there were some really shocking videos yesterday that we were seeing of trees falling on train lines up in Scotland, and that's the real worry, is whether you'll have trees, whether they'll be falling down, anything sort of falling onto the train tracks. And that's with a red weather warning. That is one of the distinct possibilities and concerns that is raised with a red weather warning, is whether any debris will fall onto the tracks, power lines down. I mean, it could be incredibly dangerous, and so that's why I think there are so many cancellations in place. So the advice really is, anyone, if you have to get on a train today or indeed on the roads, I mean, the RSC has also warned against people getting on the roads, so please do check any travel advice before you get on the train or if you get on the roads.
OK, Alice, Paul, Davey, thank you all. Let's talk to Alex Deakin from the Met Office, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning, Alex. Look, what's the current state of play and what's going to happen over the next few hours?
To start to see the worst of the effects across southwest England. So the winds are steadily increasing over the next few hours across the southwest. We've already had gusts in Wales of 75 miles an hour across the Isles of Scilly, 70 miles an hour. We are expecting those to ramp up, and particularly there through the Bristol Channel in the next couple of hours. We're expecting those gusts to increase and along South Wales. So it's South Wales, southwest England in the next few hours through this morning. And then those strong winds are going to transfer their way both eastwards and northwards, but particularly then again across the southeast of England. So that's why we have this second red weather warning that we issued overnight across southeast England and London, gusts of 70 miles an hour. And it's likely to be the sustained nature of those kind of gusts that are likely to cause some problems. That second red warning comes into play at 10 o'clock this morning. But right across Wales and across most of England, we have an amber warning in place. So again, if you're in that amber warning area, please consider whether your journeys are necessary today. And then further north, we've got a snow warning in place as well, as we've been hearing across parts of Scotland. So heavy snow fell overnight across Northern Ireland, particularly today across eastern parts of Scotland, some significant snowfall. So an awful lot going on. But the main focus in the next few hours is really strong, damaging winds across the southwest of England.
I mean, a lot of the headlines this morning, all over the front pages of the newspapers, are saying this could be the worst storm in 3 decades. Is that how you read it when you look at the data?
It's really hard to compare storms. You know, they all affect different parts of the country at different times of day. In terms of wind strength, I think it's probably best to do the comparison after it's happened and we see what we're looking at. And then you can make better comparisons with Storm A or Storm B. Ahead of time, though, we are looking at very unusually strong winds across the south in particular. This will certainly be the strongest wind event across the south for a number of years, whether that's 5, 6 years or 30 years. It doesn't really matter today. The main message has to be just take heed of these warnings. This is serious. We only issue red weather warnings when we think there is a threat to life. So please take these warnings seriously. Please stay inside, particularly across those red warning areas. But again, in the amber warning area, please only just think about whether you need to make that journey. As I say, once we've seen all the gusts today, we'll be able to make comparisons to say whether it was as bad as X, Y, or Z. But for the moment, we're really just focusing on today's storm. It is a particularly serious storm.
When you say today's storm, I mean, what are we likely to see over the weekend? Is it still going to be blustery, or will it be significantly better than we're getting today?
It will be somewhat calmer a little bit, but only a little bit. We do have a warning in place for Saturday, actually, for strong winds across the south. And of course, one of the things you've got to consider is that as Storm Eunice moves through today, if the storm doesn't bring down branches or bring down slates, it may just weaken them. So strong winds then over the weekend could bring those branches down, if you see what I mean, even though the winds over the weekend are expected to be a notch down. So we're not expecting stormy weather over the weekend, named storms, but we are expecting still wet and windy weather and more rain building up after these 2 storms that we've had this week. That could start to cause some further flooding issues. And again, just with these strong winds, which will continue, not as strong as today, but they could still cause some issues, particularly after these 2 storms that may have weakened structures or trees.
Alex, you don't see another one on the horizon. I mean, these 2 happened in very quick succession. Yeah, is there another one going to come?
We don't really foresee a storm at this stage, but these low pressure systems will continue to come in. Again, it's not really useful to speculate about whether we'll name another storm or not. We are continuing to see low pressure systems. We are going to keep this wet and windy weather coming. It's not that unusual to see 2 storms in a week or so, because they're created by an active jet stream, and the jet stream is particularly powerful at the moment, driving these low pressure systems in, and that can stick around. So we saw 2 storms, a few weeks ago with Malik, followed by Corrie across parts of Scotland. So you often do get 2 in a close succession. What is unusual is for us to name 2 storms on the same day, and that's what we did on Monday. So on Monday, we named these 2 storms, for Dudley on Wednesday and then for Eunice coming in today, to give the public 4 days notice of these storms coming in so that we are better informed. And we talked about the strongest storm potentially since 87 or whatever. The problem with that storm is it wasn't forecast, of course, famously, and that didn't give people time to prepare. This one, we named it on Monday, started flagging it then. So we've had more time to prepare for it, and therefore, hopefully, that will reduce the impact.
OK, we'll leave it there. Alex Deakin, thank you very much indeed for joining us from the Met Office today. You hardly need us telling you, but obviously the warning is that you don't go out unless you absolutely have to today.
Do you know, I love talking to people from the Met Office, though, and these forecasters who really understand what's going on. My friend Isabel Lang is like that. She really understands the weather, and it's amazing to get their insight. Actually, it's a proper science. Anyway, there's a lot of politics going on today. I mean, domestic politics as well as international politics. And, of course, on the international front, then, looking at the situation in Ukraine is particularly important. Let's talk to Damien Hines, who's Minister of State for Security and Borders. Good morning to you. It's good to see you this morning. Look, on the Ukraine situation, there's all this talk of red flags. There's all these predictions that Russia and Moscow is going to take action imminently. Again, it's all a bit of guesswork, isn't it? Well, why are we talking up the game here rather than actually waiting to see what happens and keeping stum in the meantime?
Well, we're not, Stephen, I don't think we're talking up. Look, there is this enormous build-up of military personnel and hardware, at the border with Ukraine, not just in one place, but right around an arc, approaching the border of that country. There's no sign in that build-up slowing, let alone reversing. And so it's really, really important that we're ready for what may follow. But I must stress that it doesn't have to follow. It's not inevitable. This is with Vladimir Putin. He can choose the diplomatic route. That route is available. And obviously, that is what we strongly, strongly encourage.
To experts over the past few weekends who have all said, well, it seems like we're trying to up the ante here rather than focusing on the diplomatic moves. You know, the sort of carrot and stick approach, and we're concentrating on the stick.
No, I don't, Stephen. I don't think that's right at all. Look, it's clear here who is the aggressor. When you put this kind of capability at the border of another nation, that is not coincidental. It's not just training exercises. It is important that we are ready. It is important that we stress to the Putin regime that, I mean, clearly, if they invade, clearly that is very bad for Ukraine. Clearly, it's bad for European security, but it would also be bad for Russia. Because of what would follow. And we want to be working with Russia on the great challenges that we face in Europe and in the world. And so, yeah, it is right that we set that up. But we're also really, really clear that the diplomatic route is the one to go down. There's nothing inevitable about an invasion and about conflict. And we urge Mr. Putin to take that route.
Do you not, though, find it extraordinary that in the 21st century we're almost talking Cold War talk again, and that both sides seem to be standing off against each other? It's very alarming, isn't it? One would have thought that silent diplomacy could have prevented all this.
And look, it's extraordinary that all these years after the wall coming down and after those wonderful times of seeing people reclaim their freedom, that we're having these conversations at all. But I don't think it's like a Cold War in most other sense. I mean, this is an act of aggression. NATO is a defensive alliance. It always has been, and of course, sovereign nations should be free to choose who they ally with for defence and security, and that's what we're about in the NATO alliance, and the leading position that this country takes in NATO and indeed in our preparedness right now in terms of standing by shoulder to shoulder with our friends in Ukraine, but also in the wider region, making sure that we have troops on standby for a humanitarian response in that area, making sure that we've got the arrangements in place so that British nationals, obviously in Ukraine, can come out, but supporting the Ukrainian people in their security and in their freedom.
What do you make of these? I mean, what they're calling false flag events. I mean, there's these claims that the pro-Russian separatists have been launching some rocket attacks and what have you. I mean, it's very difficult to actually confirm or get the details of any of this. But is this some part of a strategy, do you believe?
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of information ops, as it's known, is a part of modern conflict. The Putin regime is a global leader in it, and you can expect to see more of it. So false flag is particularly kind of extreme version where something can be concocted to create a spurious sort of justification for an aggressive, what was actually an aggressive act that follows. It shouldn't actually have to be incumbent upon everybody else to understand every single detail, to know every single detail of what is happening in those cases, because that is kind of part of the point, is to throw out so many of these things that it becomes difficult for people from afar to exactly extract one aspect from another. But what we need to be is prepared. We need to know that this kind of disinformation is likely to come further. There's likely to be more of it. To know that we shouldn't take such things at face value, and to be absolutely clear who here is the aggressor, who has built up all this military capability at the border of another nation, and we have to stand shoulder to shoulder, as I say, with our friends in Ukraine.
But Mr. Hines, what happens if Mr. Putin does use one of these false flag events to justify some form of aggression? What do we do then?
Well, we've been clear, along with like-minded nations, that there would be a great price to pay for the Putin regime, principally through the economic effect, and we've just passed legislation to enable us to make wider and deeper sanctions than before. In terms of kind of any company, any organisation that's of economic significance to the state, and we will deploy the full set of what is available to us, as will other countries, and that would be obviously a very, very grave consequence indeed.
Well, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's Damien Hinds, MP, who's Minister of State for Security and Borders.
Fascinating to get his thoughts on that. And, of course, there's so much going on for the government as well, including, of course, the Partygate situation, whether you think it's important or not, and your views coming through on that, and some do, some don't. But the Prime Minister does have questions to answer, and he's got to get that questionnaire from the Metropolitan Police in by 10 o'clock tonight. Our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, is here now. I mean, what is all the hoo-ha with this, Tom, in the fact that it just needs to be filled in, doesn't it? Why has it taken so long?
Well, there are quite a lot of intricate facts to get across on the table. Of course, we know it's not just the one event that the Prime Minister has to explain himself for. There are around a dozen events that the Metropolitan Police is asking about, some of which the Prime Minister has said he was at, some of which he was not at. And to the extent to which the Prime Minister takes responsibility for what his team does is an open question. But this is a questionnaire he will be answering, or rather his lawyers will be answering,
well, one would
in a
hope he'd have
personal
finished
capacity.
it by now. Wouldn't you hope he would be organised enough to have finished it by now?
I think, to be fair to the Prime Minister, he's had rather a lot on his plate this week. He has been darting around the world, and this deadline is, of course, the deadline by which it may have got in. We will not be told when it is handed in and when it is not, but they'll be wanting to make sure that all of the detail there is absolutely scrupulous, and particularly the explanation for why the Prime Minister may well have attended an event or not is a particularly intricate one. Of course, number 10 is not just a workplace, it is also a home, and that seems to be the crux of the argument there, that this is a different situation that many might be used to.
If he ends up, I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it, in the sense that if he ends up getting fined, you know, I don't know, £100 fine, whatever it may be, no skin off his nose in one respect, but doesn't that then indicate that he has at some point lied to Parliament and in effect broken the ministerial code?
Well, this is the point. If the Prime Minister lies to Parliament at that dispatch box, that's a breach of the ministerial code. That is, under our rules, a resigning offence. However, I suppose the Prime Minister could argue that if he has broken the rules,
misled?
he may have inadvertently broken those rules, broken rules without knowing that he did so, if he maintains that he thought that it was a work event. And there are many different ways to interpret what a work event is. If you have a glass of wine in the middle of the day with colleagues that you are working with, is that work or is that a party? I think to some people that might be a very boring party.
He doesn't even drink anyway, does he?
Not often, not often.
So, I mean... But at no point, as far as I can see, did he ever say in the House of Commons, I never had a glass of wine with colleagues.
No, but he did say that there were no parties.
Yes, but
the question is,
gives him wriggle room, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and it's open to interpretation. And this is why there are lawyers poring over this questionnaire, and why these responses matter, and the interpretation of what constitutes a party, something that we don't have a pure legal definition for, is quite an interesting point of contention. Of course, that's the legal matter, although in the minds of many people of the United Kingdom, it's not the legal matter that is the point. It's the fact that those who set the rules need to almost go beyond the rules. It's not just about the letter, but the spirit and the interpretation of those rules. And of course, a lot of people had a pretty torrid time over the last 2 years over various forms of lockdown, restricting their social interactions more than they would have liked to do so. So it's that impression that might have a more political weight than the actual rules of the thing.
Can I just ask, though, at the moment he's on the world stage as well, isn't he? I mean, he's flying to Munich, I think,
he is
tonight.
This weekend.
Yeah. And he's in some very, very important meetings, Ukraine amongst other things. Is there any indication that his status is being knocked at all by what's happening at home? A lot of people say, oh, he can't be taken seriously as a Prime Minister at the moment. Is there any indication that's happening?
If there is, it hasn't filtered through to the Ukrainian people, and indeed the Ukrainian president, who just yesterday tweeted out his personal thanks to Boris Johnson, because the UK has been one of those countries, along with America, and it has to be said, not so much the continental European countries, that have been pretty firm on this issue. So whether it's the Baltic states, whether it's Ukraine, the countries that are in this crisis area seem to have not been affected by the domestic political wrangling. And if there was anyone that was going to bring it up, it would be the Russians. They love to poke and mix things up. And I haven't heard that yet from the Kremlin.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Look, good to see you, Tom, this morning. We should catch up with you a little bit later on. Do stay with us here on Breakfast, because we've got all your health worries dealt with. Dr. Amika is going to be here in a couple of minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I can feel a chill coming on. Can you?
Can you?
I can see, or a sniffle or something.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I'm going to have a complaint of some description, because at 8:30 on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, we can go through all your medical complaints. Thank you very much.
No, have you got one?
I can find a few, yeah. It's time for telemedicine, and Dr. Amika Okorocha is here. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Can we kick off with, before we get to the questions, looking at prostate cancer, because it's one of those cancers that we're all sort of aware of. Men in particular, I think, don't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we don't like to think about having a check and all the rest of it. Where are we? What is the situation in the UK at the moment?
So prostate cancer is the most common cancer affecting men now, and 1 in 6 men, especially over the age of 50, will have symptoms and present with some type of prostate cancer potentially. So at the moment, men don't like going for checkups because of what happens. And people like me, doctors...
Is that true, or is that a rumour?
No, it's true.
It's true.
It's true.
What do you mean, because of what happens?
Well, it's a finger at the bottom.
Yeah.
I see,
a lot of the time, you'll have a rectal exam. We call that a DRE.
I had to ask, didn't I?
Direct rectal exam, where we will use a finger and examine the prostate to check the size and the regularity of it. However, there are a number of different things you can do, in fact, to find out if you may have prostate cancer. So looking obviously at the family history, looking at the age, and then looking at the background of the patient, and then certain tests such as the PSA, which is prostatic-specific antigen test, which is basically a blood test that shows a marker which can increase your chance of having prostate cancer. This is because a lot of the symptoms, the urinary symptoms, such as having blood in the pee or impotence or incontinence, these are very, very vague symptoms, and they often occur to aging men anyway. So they're not directly related and say, okay, you have this symptom and you're likely to have prostate cancer.
Do you think one of the reasons as well that men don't like going to the doctor about this very problem is because they perceive that nothing could be done about it anyway? Or that what can be done isn't something men would particularly like. I mean, I know that a lot of people are worried about having the prostate removed renders you impotent, which isn't always the case, is it?
It's not always the case. And when you look at prostate cancer, there are a number of different treatable methods. As in removing a section of the prostate or a resection of the prostate is just one of the surgical treatments. And that depends on the stage of the cancer, the grade of the cancer, how much it's affected, and whether or not you can do chemo or radiotherapy. There are a number of different treatments for prostate cancer. And it's one of these cancers that when caught early is one of the most treatable cancers with one of the best prognoses. So I urge anyone who is 50 and over to have these regular checks, even if it's just a blood test and examination, as embarrassing as it may be.
And I tell you what, be brave, gents, be brave, because, I mean, women go for smear tests, and that must be as embarrassing for women as this would be for fellas.
But women are always generally more likely to be open and go to their doctor when they have a problem.
they don't like it, though.
Men are a little bit more stubborn, especially when they're older than their 50s.
But it is that important.
Yeah, these old boys need to get themselves down to the doctor.
Get it checked out. I'm not 50 yet, so I haven't had the pleasure, but we shall. My time will come.
I tell you something I've had the pleasure of
what's
here,
that?
which is Susan in Wolverhampton. Hi, Susan. She's rung in saying, I'm suffering with a lower back problem and sitting aggravates it. What can I do to ease the pain when I'm sat at my desk? Gosh, I'm there with lower back pain.
Yeah, I think all of us are. A lot of us have had lower back pain. Even myself, sitting at a computer. Because when you're sitting down, your back gets stiff. And this back pain is aggravated by sitting, which is why we advise that even when you're working, if you're working from home or you're working for a chair and desk, at least once or twice a day, you're getting up and doing some sort of movement or some sort of back stretch. Because this isn't going to just affect your lower back, but the whole spine in itself. So you should make sure you're as active as possible, because if not, that stiffness is going to cause you pain.
Is it better off if you see these adverts sometimes for these like kneeling chairs, they call them, where you're actually sort of on your knees?
Some people find them more beneficial. Some people find these standing desks more beneficial because they're not sitting. There are a number of different methods you can use.
Just to move around, really.
Yeah, moving around is the main thing. But even if you're sitting for a long time, sometimes you can't avoid that because that's your job. And then you can have modifications put into your chair with backrests, which can ease some pressure on the spine and make it easier for you. And then another thing, obviously, is the obesity epidemic we have and weight gain, which obviously is going to cause a lot more pressure on your back, even when you're sitting down. So obviously, making sure that your diet, nutrition, your exercise is optimum is going to help your back in the long run as well.
Bill in Blackpool, morning to you, Bill. Hope you're doing all right up there. It was terrible with Dudley, I know, in Blackpool. Storm Dudley. Bill suffers with glaucoma. He takes daily drops, but his eyes always feel tired. Is there anything he can do?
Well, OK, so for those who don't know, glaucoma is an eye condition which is characterized by damage of the optic nerve, the nerve that controls our vision, usually due to an increased pressure in the eye. And normally drops do help this because they can decrease the pressure in the eye, and you're regularly, hopefully, seeing your optician who's measuring the pressure in the eye and can do a few more other tests, eye tests, to look at your vision. However, if your eye is getting more tired, that does worry me, depending on what other symptoms you may have, because it could be indicative of another autoimmune condition called myasthenia gravis, where you can get droopy eyelids and tired eyes, and this is a complete different condition in itself.
So what should Bill do?
So what he should do is, one, see his optician and get his tests. That way they can regulate and test the pressure in both the eyes and decide whether or not he's due for drops. And there are other different methods you can try, such as laser surgery, could actually release some of the ducts and release the pressure in the eye. And then there's surgical methods, which your optician can refer you to an ophthalmologist for when you have severe glaucoma that's affecting your vision.
So go and get it checked out properly. Just a very quick one from Amir in Newcastle, who's had a bad cough for a week. Do they need to see the GP?
Well, first of all, they'll probably need a COVID test to make sure that it's not COVID. Like, cough is so ambiguous, and it depends what's associated with the cough. It's not necessarily the duration, but it's the other associated features. So is it a dry cough, like a viral type cough, or is it a productive cough where you're producing a lot of sputum? Because in this case, you may need antibiotics. Sometimes you could even go online on Lloyd's Pharmacy and do a questionnaire which can go through the symptoms you have, and you can have antibiotics sent out. And if these haven't worked, you can then go ahead and see the GP. Obviously, make sure you can exclude COVID first, because that's going to be the first thing that comes to your mind in this day and age. However, if you have symptoms such as coughing up blood, or sputum, or severe temperature, or severe chest pains or palpitations, that's when I advise you go and call 111 and not only see your GP, but sometimes you may even need to come into A&E and see a medical specialist.
OK, Amir, there you go. That's the advice for you. Good advice it is too, Dr. Amika. Good to see you. You're a picture of health.
Well, so he should be.
Well,
Doctor
I
try to be.
to give you confidence.
That's quite right. Really good to see you. Well,
Thank you very much.
Are you in every Friday?
I'm in usually Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Good. Well, we'll see you.
Yeah, we'll see you next Friday then. Yeah.
Good stuff. Cheers,
We're
family,
only just
guys.
getting used to this ourselves. Thanks very much indeed. Right, but coming up in the next few moments, we're going to be looking through the newspapers. That's after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning to you. It is 8:39. Time to take you through the papers this morning with the legendary broadcaster, Liz Kershaw, and
the equally legendary Mike Parry.
The less legendary.
Oh,
Mike.
Oh, Liz is a legend in her own life.
Absolutely, yeah.
Liz, let's kick off with the FT, should we? Looking at a Labour-Lib Dem pact. Oh, this sounds familiar.
Yeah, how democratic is this in the Financial Times? Ooh, get me. So where the Liberal Democrats have a good chance of beating a Conservative candidate in the next general election, Labour is saying we won't put up a candidate so that we don't take votes from the Lib Dems, and vice versa. Well, I don't think that's very democratic or satisfactory. It's depriving people who've got, invested political views in a party, not having the opportunity to vote.
Yeah.
And I think that could mean, low turnout in some places because people will think, well, none of the above. I'm not going putting my cross in the box.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happened where I live so many times now that they just don't bother to put up a Labour candidate because our Tory MP's got a 33,000 majority, but that's not the spirit.
Don't you think Labour should be a bit stronger than this?
Well, you'd think so. You'd think
they're
if
the
they're
opposition.
Gonna say, I totally agree with you, Anne. If they're going to say we're going to, rule the country with confidence and with a will, and it comes from a Labour manifesto, now they've got to water it down because that's exactly what David Cameron had to do when he went into coalition with them. And you've got half-hearted policies, haven't you, on all sides? Also, Gordon Brown tried to do a coalition job, didn't he? Just before Cameron did, and that didn't work. But Liz is absolutely right here. Once you get into what they call tactical voting, wheelies off in that constituency, and we'll put the pressure on there. It's a recipe for utter disaster.
And then we'll maximise our success separately, and then we'll form a government which nobody voted for.
That's right, and then we'll all fall out.
Coalition.
Yeah.
And then you get university fees.
It also seems a bit defeatist, because if they're talking about this now,
absolutely,
and it's 3 years before another general election, then they just sort of made up their minds that they haven't got what it takes.
I totally agree. Look what happened in Scotland when the NSP suddenly decided to do a bit of a coalition with the Greens. The attitude towards the NSP changed SNP changed absolutely dramatically, didn't it? Because they were no longer single-minded. They were then having to give a little bit to the Greens, and the policies went all over the place.
But you can understand why. I mean, I have to say, you can understand why voters are going to end up feeling disenfranchised by all of that. Electric cars, Mike, we're all going to have to get to grips with them at some point.
Yeah, it says here, fewer than 1 in 5 electric car chargers installed last year was a rapid version, threatening the target of banning petrol and diesel by 2030. Electric cars are going to be the biggest disaster in the history of this country. I read a story last week that a chap who had an electric car, which was only 5 years old, his battery ran out. So he went to get a new battery. The battery for the car, £12,500. Value of the car at the time, £8,750. It's going to be an utter disaster. I mean, Stephen, I know you're a big fan, but I have researched this thoroughly. If we ran every car in this country with electricity, we would have to open 10 new nuclear power stations to provide the electricity for them to run. We don't have any electricity in this country. We're going to have shortages of electricity this winter.
The point is, whereas all these things, I mean, it's right, these systems are not in place now. They will be.
They can be
because they're going to have to be.
When? And where's the electricity coming from? That's what I mean.
Well, on the batteries, there is good news. It's not widely reported, but they're building a massive battery plant in Coventry to serve the car manufacturers in that area. And that'll be brilliant, especially for the likes of Jaguar, Land Rover and Aston Martin, if you can afford one, which are on their doorsteps. But we're going to build our own batteries. We've also got lithium being mined in Cornwall, I think.
That's right, you have,
So we're producing that.
You've got to do something. I mean, it's not that I'm a fan, Mike. I mean, I drive a diesel.
Do you?
Yeah.
Motorists will be elitist.
Club at driving into London now.
No, because it's a new car, so it doesn't.
Motorists will be elitist. Nobody will be able to afford electric cars by the time we get there, I assure you. And by the way, you know also that electric cars are so heavy, they are throwing out all sorts of pollution from the tyres, which are depleting much quicker than ordinary tyres.
Why are they heavy? Because they haven't got an engine.
A huge battery. The battery weighs more than an engine. It's about twice the weight of an engine. And the tyres are degrading much more quickly than tyres these days. And in urban areas, it's now being found that the air pollution is more severe where there are electric cars.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I have faith in scientists. I think they will overcome that.
Yeah, OK, let's hope so.
Yeah, right. GP shortage. Oh, this is depressing, Liz.
Yeah, I was chatting to the doctor about this as well, see if he'd seen the impact of this. And there are fewer GPs than for years, and people are retiring early. Also, female GPs choose to work fewer hours because they've got childcare, etc. Whether you think it's the onus is
there's
on
a lot of
the mother or
unhappiness
not.
in
there's
GP
a lot of
surgery.
dissatisfaction. But I'd experienced this week. I was trying to get somebody I care about to see a doctor, and his girlfriend rang the GP surgery and was told, "Oh no, just go and present yourself at A&E." And that's what's happening. And our A&E departments are now the primary face of the NHS, and GPs are supposed to be triaging people. So
and you've got your drop-in centres and your urgent care centres.
The
A&Es are overwhelmed at the moment, aren't they?
They now have GPs in there to do what GPs should do in the surgery. And the thing about it is that I think it's archaic in a way. Perhaps we should rethink GPs, because it's quite unique to this country. Even if you've got private healthcare, you have to go and get a referral from an NHS GP. Whereas if you live in many countries in Europe or in the United States, you're capable of knowing, well, this is a paediatric problem, or this is my skin, or, this is my my chest or whatever. So you go to a specialist doctor. You don't have to go to a GP.
No, but we've always prided ourselves in this primary healthcare layer, where you go to a GP first.
Something else. People don't privatise the NHS. GPs are already private companies. GPs' practices are already private, and you know. This was set up in 1948 with the NHS to appease doctors who didn't want to become part of a state-run health service. So they told, OK, you can remain as private practices, and that's how it's still run. I think it needs sorting out.
Yeah,
it does.
Something isn't
fundamentally.
Right with it all. Parking charges, Mike, in the Express?
Yeah, absolutely. Drivers will be priced out of towns by parking charge hikes. This comes from a report by the AA. And I trust the AA, you know, the Automobile Association. They've been around since the days when my dad was a member and a bloke rode around on a bike with AA written on the front. You know what I mean? In a little yellow box with all these spanners in.
They're so wonderful when they turn up.
Absolutely, absolutely. They are the fifth emergency service. But no, the point they're making here is, once again, the motorist is the cash cow to every local authority. They charge you to go in the towns with congestion charges. They charge you like mad to park in the towns. And the parking fees that the local authorities charge, they're trying to rack them up to commercial rates, you know, which are charged in car parks. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know for a fact, because near where I live, that when you put up the parking charges, the inverse effect is traders lose out.
Yes.
They honestly, when I moved to where I am in Stockbroke of Surrey, as I call it, OK, the charges used to be something like about £3.50 a day if somebody on the park there, and they'd walk down to the station and get the train to town. That is now £14 a day. So nobody comes into the town anymore. And it wasn't just that they were walking to the station, they were walking past all the shops to the station and past all the shops on the way back.
Yeah.
And it's gone completely dead now. You know, my hairdresser, my coiffurist, as I call him, his business has halved since they put up the parking charges in the town, because people simply won't drive in.
And the answer to that, I've always found, where I've lived, is free parking, but for a short time.
Totally agree.
Because
1 hour,
that
2
increases the number of people coming in.
Yep.
I can park here for half an hour, I can whip into that shop, whip into that shop, and nip out again, and you've created another space for the next person. To me, that works.
No, that is brilliant, because the way the equation works is local authorities have also cut out a lot of parking spaces and put in bike lanes or something like that. So the ones they've got left, they say we'll double the price in those to try and retain the revenues we had before.
I have to say
is madness.
There's where I live, there's a load of electric charging points that you can't park in unless you've got an electric car. There's never anybody in them.
No. And also, without being unkind...
I know what you mean.
Without being unkind, there's too many disabled bays, which I see empty all the time. Of course I want disabled people to have access to shops, but the proportion... If a disabled bay is empty, shouldn't it be allowed that somebody should go in and be able to use it if it's not being used under certain circumstances, but then give it up, of course, if it's needed for somebody who's got a blue badge?
There do seem to be a lot of disabled bays. I mean, if you're a disabled person, let us know what you think about all that. Let's just finish off with a bit, because I like a cup of tea. Liz, as you know, what should I be having with it?
Well, have you ever been... We had a chippy tea last night before I came down, fish chips, mushy peas, Stony Stratford. Anyway, I put the pot of tea on while he was going to get them, and that's just perfect to me. I've been out for fish and chips at lunchtime, you know, to sit in, and somebody said, do you want a glass of Chardonnay with that? No, it's just wrong. Anyway,
if you're eating fish and chips, you should have a cup of tea.
It's now official. Expert reveals that tea, the flavour, just ordinary builder's tea, Yorkshire tea, whatever, is flavour enhancing, complementary to fish and chips. And then you've got the article, I think, Mike. It goes through the different drinks, like Earl Grey goes best with something. And different drinks, a pint of beer. Because you like your ale with your fish and chips.
Well, I do. Today's Friday, OK? It could well be I end up at lunchtime today in Wetherspoons, because on a Friday, Wetherspoons is the biggest fish and chip shop in the world. Did you know that?
No.
They serve more portions of fish and chips on a Friday in this country than anywhere else in the world consistently. You can't drink a tea in a Wetherspoons.
You can, I've done it.
Well, maybe you have. A lot of people have.
I've done it.
All right, well...
What are you arguing for?
No, I'm arguing for a pint of beer. Because Ruddles, in my local Wetherspoons, is £1.23 a pint, which is cheaper than a cup of tea in most other places. £1.23 a pint.
That's amazing.
So I get the fish and chips and peas and all of that, but I love bitter with my fish and chips. I've always had it. When we used to go to Blackpool, you know, on nights out with the lads and all that, we always ended up with fish and chips.
No, see, I'm sorry, I like fish and chips with a Bacardi and Coke.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, to me that is absolutely perfect.
Oh,
yeah. Actually, this is a good one. GBViews at gbnews.uk. What is the perfect meal? Maybe the quintessentially British meal, because you can't get anything much more British than fish and chips.
No.
Mushy peas and a cup of tea.
Bit of curry sauce.
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
Curry sauce.
No. Boo.
No, my son has fish chips, mushy peas, curry sauce and a battered sausage on his bag. He's 6'7".
This is what keeps Britain going.
It is. It is.
And a wing of chicken as well.
Yeah, the emails will pick up on this one. GBViews, gbnews.uk. Love it. Liz, Mike, it's been great to see you this morning.
Thank you very much indeed. Very much indeed.
Now, cystic fibrosis patients have received a groundbreaking treatment on the NHS in Wales, and they say it's made a world of difference to their daily lives. 9 in 10 people with the genetic condition could benefit from the 3-drug combination called Kaftrio. I think that's how it's said. It was approved by NHS England last year. Well, Rebecca Bowe and Sophia, her 11-year-old daughter, who has cystic fibrosis, join us now. It's really good to see you both this morning. Look, Sophia, how has life changed for you since you've been on this drug?
Sophia hasn't actually started on the drug yet. We're still waiting for our delivery. It should be here any day now. We waiting for it.
Oh, right. Oh, so you're desperately waiting. I mean, has it been an issue to get hold? Do you struggle to get hold of this?
It's the drug that everybody wants now. So we just in the queue, we waiting. We've had the drug that comes before it, the Orkambi. So we continuing with the Orkambi for now. And then as soon as it's our turn in the list, then we're Sophia's next. So she's had all the pre-checks done, and then she'll move straight on to the Kaftrio then. What the drug is and why is it is being seen as so amazingly helpful at the moment? Well, up until now, all the drugs have dealt with the cause. The cause. So when things go wrong with the cystic fibrosis, the chest infections, and when IVs are needed in hospital, it's always dealing with the problems that come from the cystic fibrosis. And the difference with this drug is starts to deal with the root cause underneath, just starting to make Sophia's body and other CF patients think differently and act differently. Because there's in our body there's parts that open and close, and with Sophia's body they stay closed. And what this drug does will start slowly opening everything up in her body to start making it think that it's doing what a normal body should do. So it's dealing with the root cause rather than the symptoms of the CF. Sophia, I mean, what is life like for you now? Do you find it a struggle?
Not really. All I have to do is fitness and take meds.
Presumably would make life better. I mean, certainly some people who've taken it already have said they felt better within hours, so it could open up a whole new lease of life for you. Yeah, Sophia's on about 40 tablets a day and has been since she's 11 now. Excuse me, and she has been since she's been born, pretty much from 3 weeks old when we had the heel prick test, and it identified that Sophia had CF, which we had absolutely no idea that we would even carry as of the gene. So she was on medication straight away. So I mean, physio and taking a lot of medication has just become part of our life. So this will most definitely change the way that Sophia's body thinks and the way Sophia's body acts going forward. So it's going to be huge for us as and when we get the delivery. Well, look, we wish you absolute luck and all the health that we could possibly wish you. I mean, it must be wonderful as somebody living with CF to actually for the first time see brightness on the horizon. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's brilliant. Let us know how you get on, too. Indeed. Rebecca and Sophia Bowe there. Stay with us. We've got more from our reporters right across the country for the very latest on Storm Eunice.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank, and so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile/hour wind gusts during the next few hours, but in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile/hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile/hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning to you. 9 o'clock. It's Friday, our first Friday.
It is. Yes, actually, if you're watching and you think, where's Eamon?
Where's the other two?
Yeah, exactly. We're here from Fridays now.
Yeah.
So get used to it. Sorry, no, I didn't mean that. We've got to get used to it.
We've got to get
but
used to
happy
it.
Friday anyway. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We are live on your TV, on your radio, on the GB News app and on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. So wherever you are, you can take us out and about with you today.
Coming up this morning on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, A rare red weather warning for parts of England and Wales as Storm Eunice heads for the UK. Hundreds of schools will close in affected areas and trains could be cancelled at the last minute. Our reporters are up and down the UK keeping you up to date.
We're going to be joined by the former director of anti-doping at UK Sport, who'll be giving us her take on Kamila Valieva, the 15-year-old Russian figure skater who fell several times in her final routine.
Plus, The Sun on Sunday's showbiz editor Hannah Hope joins us with all the latest news from the world of showbiz.
And of course, we want to hear from you this morning. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We've not been getting through as many of them today because we've run out of paper.
Can you believe we've run out of paper?
So we can't print.
I mean, we're meant to live in a paperless society now, aren't we? So maybe we've taken it too seriously.
Some things we do need those. So that's why we've not been getting through as many today. But we'll get that sorted. So keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBnews. We're talking about Partygate a little bit earlier on. It's interesting. You get through. Morning Andrea says, if I'd lost a loved one without being able to say goodbye, footage at parties at number 10 would upset me. The passage of time does not alter the hypocrisy of those with a huge lack of awareness for public opinion.
Jeff in Herefordshire, hi Jeff, says, you ask if we should keep talking about Partygate, but I think we should stop all discussions about it.
And Jeff Goff in Buckingham, beautiful part of the world, says COVID killed people not going to a party. So let's move on with what really needs sorting out.
Yeah, Alex has got an interesting one. Hi Alex, he says, or is it a lady, Alex? I don't know. I have no time for the Prime Minister. I was a civil servant for 25 years, so I do understand the system. However, people should understand the pressure these people were working under. Many of the critics were sitting in their homes getting paid 80% of their wages and wouldn't understand how demanding other people's jobs are. Give them a break and move on to more positive things, please. See, that's because, we were asking, are you absolutely fed up with Partygate? We learned that Boris Johnson has got to put in his answer to the police questionnaire. He's got until 10 p.m. this evening. I hope he's already put it in, but there you are. That's the deadline. But do any of us really care anymore? It seems that we're still divided on it.
I just find it a little bit odd that all the lawyers are involved. And if it's a question that many people across the country will have filled in, if they've been sort of caught doing something that they shouldn't have been doing during COVID, why not just, in all honesty, just fill it in? Why do the lawyers need to get involved? That's what I don't get. Just fill it in.
You have to be very careful what you say if you're Prime Minister, though, don't you? Yeah. Because it rears up later and haunts you. And if he is found guilty of something and if he is fined, how is he going to argue his way out of that one? Because a lot of people will then argue that clearly he must have misled Parliament. And that becomes resignable.
Yes.
But
we shall see, though. We shall see. We'll find out what goes on maybe later on this week, but you never know.
Won't be that fast.
In the meantime, of course, there's lots of weather problems today. We had Storm Dudley. Now we've got Storm Eunice causing disruption in some respects across the country, but thousands of people are without power in the south of Ireland. British Airways have cancelled flights across the UK. Schools have been closed in Scotland.
Yeah. Now, we've got reporters out and about everywhere. Our reporters are in Northumberland, Derbyshire and Northern Ireland right now. So let's see if we can cross live to Rachel Sweeney, who's our North East of England reporter. She's in Morpeth. We've got them all there, as you can see. Let's go to you, Rachel, if you can hear us first. What's the latest there? How are things?
Well, it's just been one storm after the other here in Northumberland. The whole of the northeast of England has been battered 5 times now in 4 months with these storms. And the difference between this region compared to the rest of the UK is that we are constantly playing catch up. It is so difficult, so difficult to catch up with the clean-up operation.
Yeah, it is going to... I mean, this is the problem, isn't it, Rachel, that, it's whatever happens in the immediate term, it's then clearing up afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, the storm Arwen hit the farming industry, especially back in November. Joining me now is a farmer from Morpeth in High Laws Farm. This is David Renton. You've lived here all your life. Your family have had this farm for 60 years. Have you ever known anything like this constant battering of storm damage?
No, to be fair, you know, we've had a few bad storms over the years, but nothing like we've had this last 6 months, if not more. Yeah, I've never witnessed anything like it, the devastation that it caused. You know, when we went to bed that night, you could hear the rattling and the crackling and the crashing of trees coming down. I went out for a bit, did a bit tree clearing, but then it was unsafe to be out there, to be honest. So came back in and just thought, well, we're just going to have to see what things like are in the morning. It was just too dangerous to be out there.
It's like playing catch up, isn't it? Because every time we just start to get back on our feet, there's another storm here.
Yeah, we seem to be, you know, we've been having to repair fences, you know, where trees have came down, they've ripped up fences, walls, you know, you just seem to get that done, and then, you know, the next one comes and there's more trees down, more fences down, roofs off sheds, cattle sheds. Some of the modern structures, they've been fine, but some of the older style farm buildings, they've taken a hammering and they have, slates off here, there and everywhere. Devastation, really. A lot of hard work to be done to restoration for putting it back to how it needs to be.
And how's this affected business?
Business, yeah, well, it's more cost, you know, for all, you know, we're insured. It's still the inconvenience of, you know, rain getting into sheds where it doesn't need to be in. There's crops, you know, that's in sheds. Have to be written off because the rain damaged it, you know, because it was such a wet night as well. It wasn't just wind, it was rain. There were some parts of this northeast had snow, which was devastating as well. So yeah, it was, and I think the rain loosened all the structure around the trees, and that, you know, that's why there was so many came down. So yeah.
Speaking of snow, there's quite a lot of snow in Towlaw area of County Durham. We'll be heading there next, and we'll keep you posted throughout the day here on GB News.
Lovely stuff, Rachel. Thank you. There's some lovely girls behind you as well.
You never think of that, the farmers having to bring all the animals in.
Oh.
That must be quite a task in itself. And then worrying about the farm buildings. Yeah. OK, shall we now cross to our West Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who is in Willington. Hello there, Will. How is the region there being affected?
Good morning. Yes, from the East Midlands, Derbyshire, Willington, small town just on the edge of the River Trent, where the Environment Agency have been watching very closely the water levels here. Just to give you a bit of an idea of what's going on around the country, there's 10 severe flood warnings, around 30 flood warnings, the lesser one, and then around 90 to 100 flood alerts. This area here in Willington, just on the edge of the River Trent, is where there's high water levels. Then there is one of those lesser flood alerts, but the Environment Agency is recommending that people stay away from areas like this and do be very careful if they are going to go around these sort of public footpaths where they might be out and about in the open. They're saying that you should be prepared whenever there is a flood alert, whether that's your area here by the River Trent or in other parts of the East Midlands by the River Soar, where there's also a similar flood alert. Around the country, the real worry for the Environment Agency is the River Severn estuary, where they are seeing those severe flood warnings. You can see kind of around here, around the River Trent, there is some groundwater. It's not at those levels where it would cause any sort of concern for maybe the people that live in Willington. But you can just see from the River Trent behind me where the levels are quite high. You'd be very surprised that 10, 20 minutes ago, it was actually really clear, bright blue skies. But the winds up to 80 miles per hour are really bringing this storm in. And over the next few hours, people in Derbyshire here in the East Midlands, as well as around the rest of the country where there's that amber warning, are going to be looking out for how the storm is going to change their day.
OK, Will, thank you. Let's head to Northern Ireland. Doogie's there for us. I mean, there are real concerns about, not only the conditions, but power outages as well, Doogie, in Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland.
I'm not sure if Doogie's heard us there.
No, we've lost him.
Doesn't look as though the storms have hit there yet at all, does it? Doogie, hello, can you hear us? We'll try once more. No, he's wondering why we're not speaking to him.
Yeah, no, he's gone. But so there's certainly been some outages in Ireland, which is causing a lot of concern. And real concern here as well that actually some power lines and things could well come down over the next few hours, so that's going to cause even more problems.
And we had a reporter out earlier in the programme by the Severn estuary there, and it looked very, very blowy there. Really quite it was sort of
Oh,
heating
yeah.
up, wasn't it? It was looking really
Yeah.
bad. If you live in that area, let us know how it is for you. Are you staying indoors? And what are you doing at the moment? How have you managed to get out of a day at work? Have you taken that decision? Or are you going to try getting into work today? The official warning is don't. If you don't have to, please don't. It's not worth it.
Yeah, don't risk it. I have to be perfectly honest with you. I'm dreading the drive
Driving home.
Dreading it. But anyway, we shall see how we go. In the meantime, let's bring you up to date with the other stories today. And Ukraine's military says 60 ceasefire violations by pro-Russian separatists have been recorded in the last 24 hours. It's after Ukraine's foreign minister claimed a village near the city of Luhansk had been shelled from within the occupied territory of Donbass. Boris Johnson is due to attend a major security conference in Munich this weekend to try to de-escalate tensions between Russia and the West.
NHS leaders in England want free COVID tests to remain in place for the public. A survey of senior staff found 79% disagree with a proposal to end self-isolation rules and scrap free tests. The Prime Minister is expected to announce a Living with COVID plan on Monday.
The Justice Secretary Dominic Raab has announced plans to create 4,000 prison places across 16 sites by the mid-2020s. The government pledged to increase jail capacity by building new wings and refurbishing old prison spaces.
And a ban on junk food advertising on the London travel network is said to have led to healthier shopping habits. The London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has found the TfL ban on foods that are high in fat, salt and sugar has contributed to around 1,000 calorie decrease in an average weekly household shop.
I don't know how to...
Which I can't... No, it's very good press and publicity for them, though, isn't it?
Yes.
They're saying, look, our ban worked, but I don't see how they can know that. Anyway, we'll find out.
Now, the Olympics always has a bit of controversy involved, but the Winter Olympics has been problematic for one Russian figure skater, Kamila Valieva. Just 15 years old. There was that failed drugs test from December, but she was then allowed to continue in the Games. And then, well, the thought was she was, definitely was going to medal. That was the thought.
Yeah.
Thought of going to get
She was the favourite to get the gold.
But it went
and her previous performances have been absolutely impeccable, unbelievable. But yesterday she skated for that gold and she fell something like 5 times. It was awful to watch. She was clearly terribly upset. And of course, a lot of people are saying she's under such stress and strain. She's made world headlines for the last week because of the previous doping incident.
Yeah, it's been a bad situation for her. Well, let's talk to Michelle Verroken, former director of anti-doping at UK Sport. Good morning to you. Look, first and foremost, when we're talking about a 15-year-old here, anything that, whether something has been taken deliberately or not, you can't blame a 15-year-old. I mean, surely she has to be in the care of someone.
Well, it has taken some years for the World Anti-Doping Code that controls all our anti-doping rules across the world to recognise this. And what I think is important, we now have a category called protected persons as of 1st of January last year. And yet I wonder if the procedures themselves have actually accommodated the fact that these are children taking part in sport, and we are subjecting them to the same rules, the same procedures as we do adult athletes. So yes, the expectation has been extremely high on a very young person, and we should be doing more within the rules to make sure that we're protecting athletes when they're going through these very rigorous, very, in some respects, intimidating procedures, not only the test, but also the disciplinary process. So, if we start off with the fact that we're asking, young people to go into a toilet to provide a urine sample under the gaze of a complete stranger, and then, of course, we translate that up to the disciplinary hearing that she faced initially to try and lift the provisional suspension, and then a second time where she's facing the International Olympic Committee, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and her own international federation who wanted to reimpose that suspension while she's actually at the games. So there's huge pressure gone on here, and the decision was to allow her to compete, that it would be obviously unfair to impose that provisional suspension. And so I really am not surprised that in the end the pressure has become too much. But certainly what we've then seen is a response to her rather heartbreaking performance as one of, perhaps did the entourage do enough to comfort her? And I think that's a really difficult question, because they have to remain professional, and yet she is there competing, and she clearly had huge difficulties with that particular performance.
I mean, it's interesting, the very phraseology we use when we talk about this, because you say she is facing disciplinary procedures. She has to face this. She has to do that. She's 15. She's a child. In any other respect, it would be the adults who look after her who would be facing the disciplinary procedures, not her.
Yeah. And as part of that process, there will be that investigation into her entourage, and that includes her own parents, of course, we would have that investigation into who potentially gave her those substances. And the assumption is she didn't do this on her own. But that should be the assumption for any doping violation. So we make sure that we thoroughly understand how this situation came about, particularly if we ever want to make sure we're trying to prevent it happening again. But we are in that situation where the athlete has to take the responsibility. It's called strict liability. And so ultimately the penalty will be served by the athlete, but it may not be the full weight of the penalty if it's found that the doping violation is proven.
In terms of competing in elite sport as a whole, I mean, are we hitting a point where we should say actually children should not be allowed to compete? It should be, 16 or 18 and above.
Well, it does sort of raise a question mark over why we have a youth Olympic Games when we've also got, if you like, a kind of adult Olympic Games. So we're allowing an open category. So we're allowing those who are younger and maybe would have competed at a youth Olympic Games if that particular sport was taking place at that Games, to also be given a further chance to compete on the adult stage. And, huge expectations then. Perhaps there needs to be an age limit for the, if you like, the senior Olympics. But certainly what we really need to make sure we're doing is not exploiting children. We're not, really pushing them too far in sport too early. In the pursuit of medals, in the pursuit of glory. And that's been something that has been really a worrying concern across sport for many years. And we've seen it in sports where young athletes do compete, gymnastics, in swimming, and obviously in skating, where there has been the potential for abuse of the athletes by their entourage in the pursuit of top performances.
And in your experience, once an athlete, particularly maybe a Russian young athlete, has this hanging over her, this cloud which will probably always hang over her, does she have a future?
Well, potentially, yes. But what we do know is there is a huge dropout rate, particularly in the sport of skating. And some of it is obviously the body. Can it take all the falls, all the injuries, all the training anymore? But some of it is how young people fall out of love with their sport, and that is a really worrying concern. And we shouldn't see children specialising too early in sport if we ever want them to have a long-term future in sport. And many just decide to give up because they've been put into that competitive, if you like, pressure cooker so early, and maybe it's taken time for them to succeed, and they really have not been able to sustain that. So, I think a rethink of what it is to enjoy sport, to be able to continue in sport, and it doesn't always have to be the same sport, of course. So, it's something that we should be asking ourselves whether we have that cannon fodder approach to elite sport that we really should pull back from and allow people time to enjoy sport.
OK. Michelle Verroken, former director of anti-doping at UK Sports. Good to talk to you this morning.
Yeah. It was very sad. Robin Cousins was the former Olympic skater himself, was commentating while we were watching her do her routine, and he was lost for words. He said, "I just can't speak," and in the end, he couldn't speak. And you could hear him crying for her. He just has seen it so many times, I guess. A child, essentially, a 15-year-old child, under such pressure. It was absolutely heartbreaking. Really worries you, doesn't it? But it won't stop.
No, I'm afraid it won't. Look, do stay with us here on Breakfast. We've got all the showbiz heading your way in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is 9:23. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Time for Showbiz with Hannah Hope, Assistant Showbiz Director at The Sun on Sunday. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi. Let's have a look at Dame Joan, should we?
Yes, Dame Joan Collins. So she has just turned 88, but she's not...
I can't believe that.
She's not snuggling up with slippers and cocoa. She is out celebrating her birthday in style at London's five-star Claridge's Hotel. She was out last night and she had a star-studded showbiz guest list. Simon Cowell and his missus were there, Elizabeth Hurley, Poppy Delevingne and Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, was out enjoying the evening in a stunning black dress, which could indicate that she might be returning to showbiz society. I wonder if we'll see her stepping out now and taking a leading role as Prince Andrew steps back from the limelight.
Yes.
Well, she's got to make some money somehow.
Well, exactly, she has.
Which is true. If he's got to cough up 12 million, is it thought to be at least?
She's the breadwinner.
Well, maybe she is suddenly the breadwinner. She's done it before.
Exactly.
And
she
may feel that she's had to do it again. Gosh.
Yeah,
I can't believe Joan is 88.
No, I
brilliant.
can't.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
she really is brilliant. Wonderful.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Now, what about Gemma Collins?
So, yes, Towie star Gemma Collins. We've seen her kind of play the fun-loving gal and always, happy to send herself up. But she's done rather a serious documentary on Channel 4 called Self-Harm and Me. Now, it's actually really quite raw and upsetting. It aired last night. And she opens up about her secret battle with self-harm and cutting hurting herself. And it comes from a lot of trolling she gets online. She had one troll say, "I heard she cut her arm and gravy came out." And she opens up about how she dealt with it, with going to therapy and talking about it, which is actually really good, because I do think self-harm is still one of society's taboos, and it affects lots of young people. Self-harm in youngsters actually doubled during the lockdown. So I'm hoping that through this documentary airing, some people are getting the help that they need.
Could people just stop the abuse?
Absolutely,
Isn't
yeah.
it? Honestly, it's just terrible. Lottie Moss?
Yes, another quite sad tale. So Lottie Moss, Kate Moss's younger sister, who is a model as well, has opened up. She's in rehab and she's been suffering from cocaine addiction. Now, this is a really sad tale of history repeating itself. Obviously, Kate Moss went to rehab herself back in 2005 for exhaustion after being pictured with mystery white lines. So it does casts quite a shadow maybe on the fashion industry and that whole world. But hopefully Kate is helping her sister get the help she needs.
Let's hope so. Hannah, we've got to leave it there. It's been really good to see you this morning. Thank you. That is it from us. We're back tomorrow morning at 6.
We are.
Stay tuned because Tom's here with the briefing in just a moment.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. Storm Eunice has arrived overnight and is likely to bring widespread disruption during the next few hours, as well as, in some places, dangerous wind speeds. That's why the Met Office have issued an amber and a red warning for certain parts of the country. Its southern areas worst affected by the strong wind speeds through the rest of Friday. Storm Eunice has moved in overnight, a rapidly deepening area of low pressure with the strongest winds on its southern flank, and so in the amber warning area for the southern half of the UK, risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts during the next few hours, but in the red warning area, risk of 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Widespread disruption in the south from those winds and risk to life in some of the more exposed spots towards the southwest because of the 90 mile per hour wind gusts. The strongest of the winds move east through the morning, and rain in the north, falling as snow, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, could also lead to disruption. Risk of 20 centimetres of snow building up over the higher spots of Northern England and Scotland. Risk of blizzards and risk of drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to be cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius, milder further south, but with that very strong wind continuing through the day. The weekend, nevertheless, starts off a bit quieter. A sunny start for many at first. The strongest of the winds will have gone away. But another system moves in through Saturday, bringing some wet and windy weather to parts of England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland stay sunnier but colder, with highs here of 4 to 6 Celsius, 9 to 10 in the south. But watch out for gales around the coast of the English Channel. So more wet and windy weather through Saturday in some places. And then the focus moves north for Sunday, with the strongest winds expected across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.